In the quiet hush of a darkened room, the gentle flicker of a solitary candle holds the weight of a million unspoken goodbyes. Before the dawn breaks, before the heavy machinery of the world begins to turn, there is only the night, and the soft, breathing silence that settles over the earth. It is a stillness that stretches across vast, dark oceans, connecting quiet farmhouses bathed in moonlight to damp, misty fields on the edge of the sea. Tonight, the world is holding its breath. It is a fragile, tender moment suspended in time, made not of sweeping historical tides, but of beating hearts, whispered prayers, and the faint, rhythmic scratching of pen against paper. Miles away, an ocean away, the night is a blanket draped over countless sleeping towns. In a small kitchen, a mother sits alone at a wooden table. The house is perfectly still, save for the steady, reassuring tick of a clock on the wall. A cup of tea, long gone cold, rests softly between her hands. She is not reading, she is not working. She is simply listening to the wind outside her window, feeling the unseen pull of a son who has crossed the water. There is a quiet anxiety in her chest, a familiar, hollow ache that she carries with the grace of someone who has learned to live with the unknown. She does not know where he is tonight. She only knows that she loves him, and in the quiet of her kitchen, she sends that love outward into the dark, hoping it might somehow find him, wrap around his shoulders, and keep him warm. In another town, a young wife carefully smooths out the wrinkles of a photograph she keeps by her bedside. The edges are worn soft from the touch of her thumbs. The face looking back at her is smiling, a little crooked, full of a youthful light that she remembers so vividly it almost makes her weep. She traces the outline of his face in the dim light of her bedside lamp, whispering a quiet good night to the empty room. Across the continent, fathers stand on front porches, looking up at the scattered stars, smoking pipes in the cool night air, their thoughts drifting across the sea. These are the invisible threads that hold the world together tonight. Not steel, not wire, but the delicate, unbreakable bonds of human longing. And across the water, where the air tastes of salt and damp earth, those threads are anchored in a sprawling, silent forest of canvas. In the rolling green fields of southern England, thousands of tents sit beneath the ancient trees, glowing from within like fragile paper lanterns scattered across the misty ground. Inside these tents, the air is thick with the smell of wet wool, tobacco smoke, and the quiet camaraderie of young men waiting. There are no grand speeches here tonight. There are no trumpets sounding. There is only the low murmur of voices, the soft clinking of tin mugs, and the warm, amber light of kerosene lanterns dancing on the canvas walls. These are ordinary boys. They are bakers and school teachers, farmers and factory workers. Some are barely old enough to shave, while others carry the quiet, steady demeanor of men who left families behind. Tonight, in the damp chill of the English spring, they are simply brothers, sharing the profound, unspoken understanding of what tomorrow may bring. In the corner of one tent, a young man sits cross-legged on his cot, a wooden board resting on his knees. In his hand, a fountain pen. Before him, a single sheet of thin, fragile paper. He stares at the blank page, watching the lantern light flicker across its surface. What do you say when you have so much to say, but so little room to say it? What words can possibly carry the weight of a heart that is so full? He begins to write. But he does not write of the looming shadows, or the cold wind blowing off the channel. He does not write of the fear that flutters like a trapped bird in the hollow of his chest. Instead, he writes of the ordinary. He writes of the sunlight warming the front steps of his childhood home. He asks if the old dog still waits by the gate in the afternoons. He promises his mother that he is eating well, that the boys in his unit are looking out for him, that he is wearing the warm socks she knitted for him. He pours his courage onto the page, not in tales of bravery, but in the gentle, protective lies of a son trying to shield the woman who gave him life. He writes to bring her peace, and in doing so, he finds a small measure of peace for himself. A few cots away, another soldier is writing a letter to his sweetheart. His handwriting is elegant, careful, deliberate. He describes the beauty of the English countryside, the way the rain makes the green fields look almost unreal. He tells her how much he misses the sound of her laugh, the way she used to hum softly while she washed the dishes. He tells her that he carries her picture in his left breast pocket, right over his heart, so that she is always with him. He writes of the future, a beautiful, shining future where they will build a home with a porch swing, where the mornings are quiet and the evenings are safe. He presses his hopes into the ink, sealing them onto the page as a promise. A promise to return. A promise to live. All through the camp, this quiet symphony of scratching pens continues. The letters are a testament to the quiet resilience of the human spirit. In the face of overwhelming uncertainty, these young men do not turn to despair. They turn to love. They reach backward toward the lives they knew, grounding themselves in the memories of Sunday dinners, summer afternoons, and the gentle touch of a loved one's hand. These letters are their anchors in the shifting sands of time. There are moments of quiet interruption, too. A soft chuckle from a bunk as someone shares a joke from home. The sharing of a stale biscuit, a final piece of chocolate passed between hands in the dim light. A quiet voice asking for help spelling a word. These small moments of kindness are the everyday heroism that goes unrecorded in the heavy books of history. It is the simple, profound act of being human together, of holding up the man beside you when your own legs feel weak. A chaplain walks slowly down the muddy path between the tents, his footsteps soft and deliberate. He does not preach tonight. He simply stops, offering a gentle smile, a nod of encouragement, a quiet word of comfort to those who seek it. He carries no weapon, only a heavy heart and an infinite well of compassion. He listens to the whispered fears of boys who suddenly miss their mothers, placing a reassuring hand on a trembling shoulder. He is a shepherd in the dark, offering a quiet, steady presence in a world that feels as though it is spinning too fast. Soon, the mail clerks arrive, moving quietly from tent to tent, their canvas bags growing heavy. The men fold their letters with careful, deliberate hands. Some press a quick, silent kiss to the paper before slipping it into the envelope. Some pause, running a thumb over the written address, as if the mere touch of the ink could transport them across the sea. They hand over the envelopes, watching them disappear into the dark canvas bags. It is a surrender, of sorts. A release of their hearts into the hands of fate. Those canvas bags carry the greatest treasures of a generation. They carry laughter and tears, promises and prayers, the simple, beautiful essence of thousands of lives. They will travel back across the water, finding their way into rural mailboxes and city apartment slots, bringing a piece of these boys back to the people who love them. As the letters are carried away into the night, a new kind of quiet settles over the camp. The lanterns begin to extinguish, one by one, until the tents are nothing but dark silhouettes against the graying sky. The men lie back on their cots, pulling scratchy woolen blankets up to their chins. They stare up at the invisible canvas ceilings, alone with their thoughts in the dark. Some close their eyes and try to find sleep, seeking refuge in dreams of home. Others lie awake, listening to the soft, rhythmic breathing of the men around them, finding comfort in the shared rhythm of life. The fear is still there, lingering in the shadows, but it is quieter now, softened by the act of reaching out, of speaking love into the void. The wind gently rustles the canvas, sounding like a distant, soothing ocean wave. It whispers through the trees, carrying with it the scent of the sea and the damp earth. It is a lullaby for the restless, a gentle reminder that the earth will continue to turn, that the sun will eventually rise. In the quiet anxiety of the night, both at home and in the fields of canvas, there is a profound, beautiful unity. The mother at her kitchen table, the wife clutching the photograph, the boy staring at the dark roof of his tent, they are all breathing together in the stillness. They are connected by a love so vast and so deep that no ocean, no shadow, no impending storm can ever break it. And so, the night deepens. The shadows stretch and soften, wrapping the world in a protective, quiet embrace. Let them rest now. Let the memory of home be a warm blanket against the chill of the coming dawn. Let the unspoken goodbyes become a quiet strength, a gentle light guiding them through the dark. Rest now, in the quiet, breathing stillness. Rest, and let the gentle night hold you a little while longer. Beneath the ancient, dripping boughs of the English oaks, a sprawling city of heavy canvas breathes softly in the gray morning mist. The rain in southern England does not fall so much as it gently settles. It is a soft, persistent mist that clings to the emerald leaves, gathering in heavy drops that slowly trace the rough lines of the tree bark before returning to the damp earth below. Hidden within these ancient, quiet woods is a temporary world, woven from heavy olive-drab fabric and the quiet sighs of thousands of young men. It is a forest of canvas and steel, where time has seemingly slowed to a heavy, suspended drip. The tents stretch out in endless, rolling rows, fading into the silver fog like a dream half-remembered. Beside them, great machines of metal sit silently in the mud. They are asleep, these trucks and engines, their cold, hard surfaces beaded with the morning dew, covered by heavy tarpaulins that flutter weakly in the coastal breeze. But beneath the canvas of the tents, away from the cold steel, there is warmth. There is the slow, collective heartbeat of boys far from home, wrapped tight in scratchy wool blankets, listening to the gentle, rhythmic tapping of the rain against the roofs of their makeshift homes. As the pale, pearl-colored light of morning begins to filter through the canopy of trees, the encampment slowly stirs. There are no sudden movements here in the damp dawn. There is only the weary, quiet stretching of limbs that have found a way to rest on the hard, unyielding ground. A tin cup clinks softly against a metal canteen, a small, hollow sound that barely breaks the stillness. Soon, the rich, bitter scent of coffee begins to rise, curling through the heavy, wet air. It is a simple scent, but in this strange, suspended reality, it offers a profound and familiar comfort against the morning chill. A young soldier, his face still soft with youth, sits on the edge of his cot and strikes a match. The sudden, brief flare of orange light illuminates his tired eyes for just a heartbeat before he touches the flame to a cigarette. He takes a slow, deep breath, watching the smoke mingle with the morning fog. Without a word, he passes the glowing ember to the boy sitting beside him. They do not speak. They do not need to. In this forest of waiting, these small, silent gestures have become their truest language. A shared light, a half-poured cup of coffee pushed across a wooden crate, the quiet offering of a dry pair of wool socks, these are the gentle ways they hold one another up. They are strangers brought together from dusty prairie towns, bustling city avenues, and quiet, snow-covered mountains, yet here, in the misty woods, they are tied together by invisible, unbreakable threads of makeshift brotherhood. The days in the encampment move with a slow, heavy grace. Time feels like a river that has pooled and stilled beneath the trees. To keep their minds from drifting toward the looming horizon, the men anchor themselves in the small, repetitive tasks of the present moment. One boy sits quietly on a canvas folding chair, carefully running a needle and thread through a torn seam in his jacket. His movements are practiced and deliberate, taught to him by a mother who mended clothes by the warm light of a kitchen window. As he sews, he imagines he is sitting at her table, listening to the familiar hum of her voice and the clatter of plates. Nearby, another soldier sits with a soft rag and a tin of polish, rubbing small, dark circles into the leather of his boots. It is a calming, rhythmic motion, a way to find order and control in a world that feels entirely out of their hands. The soft shhh of the cloth against the leather blends with the patter of the rain, becoming a kind of soothing meditation. In their deep pockets, safe from the damp air, they carry small talismans of the lives they left behind. A smooth, flat river stone from a favorite childhood swimming hole. A silver coin given by a grandfather for luck, rubbed smooth by a nervous thumb. A small, dog-eared copy of a favorite book, its pages fragile and soft from being read 100 times over. These objects are heavy with memory and love. In the quiet hours of the afternoon, they trace their fingers over them, drawing silent strength from the lingering warmth of the people who gave them. If you listen closely to the camp, you will hear its gentle, sweeping music. It is not the sound of marching feet or shouted orders. It is the low, steady murmur of 100 quiet conversations blending into the mist. It is the soft shuffling of boots in the wet grass. From a faraway tent, the melancholic, reedy notes of a harmonica drift through the trees. The tune is slow and sweet, sounding like a lonely train moving through the night, carrying with it a profound sense of longing. The music wraps around the damp trunks of the oaks and settles over the canvas roofs like a soft blanket. Sometimes, the heavy air is broken by a sudden burst of muted laughter. It is a bright, beautiful sound that instantly warms the damp chill of the woods. Someone has told a joke, or recalled a funny story about a stubborn mule back home, or a battered old car that wouldn't start on the way to a summer dance. In that brief, shining moment of laughter, the heavy steel around them simply disappears. The canvas melts away, the impending storm vanishes, and they are just boys again. They are just friends sitting on a porch on a warm summer evening, with nothing but the vast, beautiful expanse of their whole lives stretched out ahead of them. When the mail arrives, a profound hush falls over the encampment. The sorting of the letters is a sacred ritual. As a name is called, a hand reaches out, taking the delicate paper envelope as if it were made of spun glass. The men retreat to their cots, or lean against the broad trunks of the trees, seeking a private sliver of space to open their treasures. As they read the familiar handwriting of a mother, a wife, or a father, the miles between them collapse. For a few quiet minutes, they are home. They can smell the lilacs blooming by the front gate. They can hear the screen door slam. A young man smiles softly at a smudge of lipstick pressed onto the bottom of a page, gently running his thumb over the faint pink dust. Another closes his eyes, pressing the letter to his chest, letting the written words of a proud father sink deep into his heart. As the gray day slowly deepens into the charcoal shadows of evening, the mist grows thicker, rolling in heavily from the unseen channel and blanketing the camp in a soft, protective cocoon. The kerosene lanterns are lit, casting warm, golden halos against the damp canvas walls. The tents glow from the inside out, looking like scattered fireflies resting in the dark woods. It is in these evening hours, when the world outside the tent vanishes into the blackness, that the truest confessions are made. The men lie back on their cots, staring up at the shifting, dancing shadows on the ceiling. The darkness provides a gentle cloak, allowing them to whisper the fears they are too proud to show in the daylight. A voice from the corner of the tent breaks the silence, speaking softly of a girl with laughing eyes who works at a bakery in Ohio. He speaks her name with such tenderness it feels like a quiet prayer breathed into the night. Another voice joins in from across the dark space, talking about a little brother who still thinks he is coming home in time for the autumn harvest. They talk about the smell of fresh-cut hay in the late summer sun, the sweet taste of cold milk from the icebox, the incredible feeling of sinking into clean, sun-dried cotton sheets. They build a sanctuary out of their shared memories, constructing a safe, warm place where their minds can rest when the anxiety of tomorrow creeps too close to the edges of their cots. And when the words finally begin to fade, when the heavy pull of sleep begins to draw them under, they do not feel quite so alone. The boy from the bustling city and the boy from the quiet prairie breathe in the exact same damp, earthy air. They are sheltered by the exact same canvas, surrounded by the exact same silent, sleeping forest. The rain begins to fall a little harder now, a soft, rhythmic patter that washes over the entire camp. It is an ancient lullaby that the earth sings to her children, a sound that has coaxed weary souls to sleep for 1,000 years. It whispers through the oak leaves, promising that this night, at least, they are safe. They are together. They are held safely in the quiet, breathing embrace of the woods. Let the canvas shield them from the wind. Let the memories of home keep their hearts warm in the damp chill. Let the gentle rain wash away the worries of the day, leaving only the peaceful rhythm of their shared breath rising and falling in the dark. Rest now, beneath the sheltering trees. Rest your weary minds, and let the quiet, misty night carry you gently into the sanctuary of sleep. There is a profound and heavy stillness that arrives just before a storm breaks, a moment when the whole world seems to close its eyes and hold its breath. Look up at the sky over the coast, and you will see a vast, unending canvas of gray. The clouds hang low and thick over the water, bruised with rain and heavy with the melancholic weight of the sea. The wind sweeps across the channel, pulling the dark water into restless whitecaps that rise and fall with an ancient, untamed rhythm. Nature herself has thrown a sudden, impenetrable blanket over the world, bringing the great, turning wheels of time to a gentle, forced halt. For the thousands of young men gathered along the edges of the land, and those already waiting deep within the bellies of the iron ships, this pause is a quiet, agonizing eternity. It is the breath before the plunge. Waiting is a gentle but persistent thief. It steals away the busy distractions of the day, the polishing of boots, the packing of canvas bags, and leaves a man with only the vast, echoing chambers of his own mind. In the crowded, humid holds of the transport vessels, the air is thick and warm. It smells of damp wool, the sharp tang of salt, and the faint, sweet scent of tobacco smoke. Here, beneath the gray skies, the men sit shoulder to shoulder, a mosaic of youth wrapped in olive drab. There is nowhere left to go. There is nothing left to prepare. Their packs are heavy, their letters are sent, their goodbyes have been whispered to the wind. All that remains is the simple, heavy act of existing in the space between the life they knew and the unknown shore that lies ahead. The ship groans softly as she rocks in the turbulent water, a rhythmic, metallic lullaby that echoes through the narrow corridors. To the boys who grew up in the quiet valleys and flat, golden prairies, this ocean is an alien thing, a vast and restless giant. One young man, his face pale in the dim light of the hull, rests his forehead against the cool iron of the bulkhead. He closes his eyes and listens to the heavy thud of the waves against the side of the ship. In his mind, he tries to change the sound. He turns the crashing waves into the familiar roar of the wind sweeping through the tall pines behind his childhood home. He turns the rocking of the deck into the gentle sway of the porch swing where he used to sit with his grandfather on warm summer evenings. He wraps himself in these memories, pulling them around his heart like a protective quilt against the damp chill of the sea. Beside him sits a friend, a boy he has known since they were children chasing fireflies in the twilight. His friend is weary, his eyes dark with the dizzying motion of the sea. There are no grand words exchanged between them. The time for talking has passed. Instead, the young man reaches into his deep pocket and pulls out a single, crushed piece of peppermint candy. He places it quietly into his friend's hand, offering a brief, silent nod. His friend takes it, their fingers brushing lightly, and a small, tired smile passes between them. It is a tiny, seemingly insignificant gesture. Yet, in the heavy shadows of the ship, it shines with the brilliant light of everyday heroism. It is the profound comfort of knowing that you are not alone in the dark, that someone beside you is tethered to the very same fears, the very same hopes, and the very same quiet resilience. Above them, the gray skies loom, mirroring the silent prayers that flutter through the minds of the men like nervous birds. These are not the grand, booming prayers of kings and conquerors. They are the quiet, fragile prayers of sons and husbands. A man sitting on his canvas pack traces the outline of a silver locket hidden beneath his shirt. His lips barely move as he whispers into the humid air. He does not pray for medals. He does not pray for glory. He simply prays that the sun will shine again. He prays that the little girl he left behind will remember the sound of his voice if he takes too long to return. He asks the universe for a steady hand, a brave heart, and the chance to walk up his own front steps one more time. The hours stretch and blur, blending into a seamless ribbon of gray light. Morning bleeds into afternoon, but the sky remains a heavy canopy of clouds. The rain begins to fall, tapping a chaotic, soothing rhythm against the steel decks above. It sounds like a million tiny fingers drumming on the roof of the world. Inside the ships, the men find strange ways to pass the impossible time. Some read small, worn books, their eyes scanning the same pages over and over, absorbing the comfort of the printed word even if the story no longer registers. Some play quiet games of cards, the soft slapping of the paper on a wooden crate serving as a metronome for the passing minutes. And some simply sleep. They surrender to the exhaustion of anxiety, letting the rhythmic, rolling motion of the ship act as a cradle. They lean their heads on their heavy packs, their breathing falling into a slow, synchronized pattern. In sleep, the storm outside does not matter. In sleep, there is no channel to cross, no cliffs to climb. There is only the sweet, merciful escape into dreams where the skies are endlessly blue and the world is soft and forgiving. Through the narrow, crowded aisles, a medic moves with quiet grace. His steps are careful as he steps over outstretched legs and sleeping forms. He carries a canteen of fresh water and a handful of small, white pills to ease the sickness of the sea. He moves like a mother checking on her children in the middle of the night. He pauses by a young soldier who is shivering despite the warmth of the hold. The medic kneels down, his movements slow and gentle. He unscrews the cap of his canteen and offers it to the boy, placing a warm, steadying hand on his trembling shoulder. "Just breathe," the medic whispers, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's engines. "Just breathe. We're all right here with you." The boy takes a slow sip of the water, and the shivering begins to subside. He looks up at the medic, his eyes wide and vulnerable, and nods. In that brief exchange, a profound transfer of strength occurs. It is the quiet heroism of compassion, the simple act of offering a piece of one's own calm to settle the turbulent waters of another's soul. As the long day finally begins to surrender to an even darker night, the atmosphere within the ship slowly begins to shift. It is a subtle change, felt rather than heard. The rumor of a break in the weather drifts through the humid air, passing from man to man like a warm breeze. The agonizing wait is nearing its end. The storm that has held them in its protective, frustrating embrace is beginning to weaken its grip. The heavy, suffocating anxiety of the unknown slowly transforms into a quiet, profound acceptance. The men sit up a little straighter. They check the buckles on their webbing one last time. They touch the letters tucked into their pockets, pressing the paper against their hearts. The silent prayers become deeply focused. The shared breath they have been holding for so many hours is slowly, collectively exhaled. They look around at the faces in the dim light. They see the fear, yes, but they also see the quiet, stubborn light of resilience. They see the baker from the corner store, the teacher from the small town school, the farmer who knows the smell of impending rain. They see themselves reflected in the eyes of strangers who have become brothers in the span of a few agonizing days. The sea continues to churn outside the iron hulls, but its rhythm feels different now. It is no longer a barrier keeping them from their destiny, it is the very road they must travel. The waves rock the ships with a steady, determined cadence, carrying them closer to the dawn. So let the gray skies hang heavy for a little while longer. Let the rain wash over the decks, and let the wind howl its mournful tune. In the warm, crowded bellies of the ships, there is a sanctuary of shared humanity. There is a quiet strength that no storm can wash away. Close your eyes, and listen to the gentle groaning of the iron. Feel the rise and fall of the water beneath you, like the steady breathing of a sleeping giant. The wait is almost over. The long, heavy pause is drawing to a close. Rest your weary mind in this final pocket of stillness. Let the rhythmic lullaby of the sea soothe your racing heart. You are surrounded by brothers. You are held in the quiet grace of the moment. Breathe in the damp, salty air, and let the gentle rocking carry you softly, safely, through the dark, waiting for the light of a new world to break. High above a dark and sleeping ocean, inside the roaring belly of a metal bird, a young man with a face painted the color of midnight simply closes his eyes and remembers the smell of rain on a dusty summer road. If you were to stand inside this trembling fuselage, the very first thing you would feel is the sound. It is not just a noise, but a living, breathing presence. The twin engines of the transport plane hum with a deep, throbbing vibration that travels through the cold metal floorboards, up through the heavy leather of the boots, and settles deep into the chest. It is a deafening, continuous roar that swallows the world whole. And yet, there is a profound and beautiful paradox at work within these narrow metal walls. The sound is so absolute, so overwhelming, that it actually creates a cocoon of perfect, surreal quiet. Because the engines have stolen their voices, the men cannot speak. And so, they are left alone with their thoughts, drifting in a vast, private ocean of memory and anticipation. They sit shoulder to shoulder, a long line of heavy silhouettes swaying gently in rhythm with the aircraft as it banks and rolls through the invisible night clouds. They are packed so tightly that they can feel the warmth of the man sitting next to them, the gentle rise and fall of a brother's chest. In this suspended world, somewhere between the damp earth they left behind and the dark fields waiting below, that shared warmth is everything. It is a tether to humanity in a sky made of steel and shadow. In the dim, shadowy interior, bathed only in the faint, ethereal glow of a single red bulb near the heavy jump door, their faces look almost unrecognizable. Hours ago, in the fading twilight of an English airfield, these young men engaged in a quiet, solemn ritual. Using burnt cork, ash, and dark grease, they painted one another's faces. They traced dark lines over their cheeks and smeared shadows across their foreheads, masking the pale softness of their youth. In the dark, the paint turns them into phantoms, blending them perfectly into the midnight sky. But if you look closely, past the soot and the shadows, the masks fade away. Beneath the charcoal, their eyes remain exactly as they have always been. They are the same bright, beautiful eyes that watched summer fireworks over a crowded park, the same eyes that carefully read the chalkboard in a quiet schoolhouse, the same eyes that looked with shy wonder at a girl dancing in a gymnasium. The paint cannot hide the gentle, fragile humanity resting just beneath the surface. It only highlights the brilliant, shining white of their eyes as they glance around the cabin, seeking out the familiar gaze of a friend. They are weighed down by an extraordinary burden. Every man is wrapped in layer upon layer of heavy canvas, thick webbing, and cold metal. Straps pull tight across their shoulders, their parachutes act as bulky, uncomfortable cushions pressing against their backs, and their pockets are heavy with supplies. They are so loaded down with gear that they can barely stand on their own, walking to the plains earlier that evening with the clumsy, shifting gait of deep-sea divers. This physical weight is a heavy, inescapable anchor. Yet, inside their minds, they are light. They are floating. With slow, deliberate movements, hindered by thick leather gloves and the tight confines of the cabin, a young man reaches into the breast pocket of his uniform. His fingers are numb from the cold altitude, but he knows exactly what he is searching for. He pulls out a small, rectangular piece of paper. It is worn at the corners, creased from being folded and unfolded 100 times over the last few months. He holds it up, tilting it delicately so the soft red glow of the cabin light falls across its surface. It is a photograph of a young woman standing on a porch. She is wearing a light summer dress, and the wind is catching her hair, blowing it gently across her smiling face. He stares at this photograph, completely deaf to the roaring engines around him. In his mind, he is stepping onto that porch. He can hear the soft creak of the wooden boards beneath his feet. He can smell the sweet scent of honeysuckle climbing the trellis. He traces the outline of her cheek with his heavy, gloved thumb. He is not a soldier in this moment. He is simply a husband, deeply and profoundly in love, drawing an infinite well of courage from the smile of the woman who holds his heart. He silently promises her that he will return to that porch. He folds the paper with ultimate care and places it back over his heart, a gentle shield of love worn beneath the canvas and steel. Further down the line, another boy is struggling. He is young, perhaps barely 18, and the cold air seeping through the uninsulated walls of the plane has caused his hands to shake. He closes his eyes tight, trying to control his breathing, trying to fight back the overwhelming tide of the unknown that waits just outside the metal door. He feels a sudden, gentle weight on his knee. He opens his eyes. The man sitting across from him, an older boy from a different state, someone whose name he barely knows, is leaning forward. The older boy's face is blackened with cork, but his eyes are soft and deeply kind. He does not say a word. He simply reaches out, offering a single piece of peppermint candy. The younger boy takes it, his shaking fingers brushing against the steady hand of the stranger. He unwraps the candy and places it in his mouth. The sharp, sweet taste of peppermint blooms on his tongue, a sudden, familiar burst of home in a world that feels so entirely foreign. The older boy offers a slow, reassuring nod, as if to say, "I know. I am here. We are together." That simple, tiny act of kindness, a shared piece of candy in the dark, is a miracle of everyday heroism. It breaks through the isolating roar of the engines. It calms the trembling hands. It is the quiet resilience of men holding each other up when the world asks them to be stronger than they ever thought possible. Time in this roaring belly moves unlike time anywhere else. It stretches and bends, turning minutes into hours. They are suspended in a great, dark void, flying through clouds that brush against the windows like ghosts. Some of the men simply fall asleep, lulled into a heavy slumber by the rhythmic vibration and the sheer, exhausting weight of their own anxiety. Their heads nod forward, resting gently against the heavy packs of the men beside them. Nobody pushes them away. They become a single, breathing organism, leaning on one another, trusting their brothers to hold them steady in the dark. For those who remain awake, the mind travels backward. They think of the quietest moments of their lives. A boy from the rolling plains of the Midwest remembers the sound of wind whispering through tall grass on an autumn afternoon. He focuses on that sound, letting it wash over the noise of the airplane. A young man from the city remembers the gentle hiss of a radiator on a snowy morning, the warm, comforting smell of coffee wafting up the stairs. They build these beautiful, intricate sanctuaries in their minds, retreating into the purest, safest corners of their memories. They are carrying the entire world with them into the sky. Every letter they ever received, every lesson their fathers taught them, every prayer their mothers whispered by their bedsides. They are a mosaic of American towns, of quiet streets and bustling avenues, all gathered together in this trembling middle room. The red light above the door continues to glow, casting long, soft shadows across the cabin. It is a warm, almost comforting hue, like the embers of a dying campfire. It bathes their blackened faces in a soft, rosy light, making them look peaceful, almost like statues carved from shadow and stone. Let the engines roar. Let the wind howl outside the thin metal walls. Inside this space, there is only the beautiful, fragile grace of the human spirit. There is the profound love held in small, creased photographs. There is the quiet bravery of a shared glance and a steadying hand. Breathe with them now. Feel the steady rhythm of their hearts beating in time with the aircraft. The night is dark, but they are carrying their own light within them. It is the light of home, the light of memory, the gentle, unwavering light of men who have found peace in the quiet moments before the dawn. Let them rest in this suspended reality a little while longer. Let the roaring lullaby of the plane carry them safely through the clouds. They are together. They are ready. And for this brief, beautiful moment in the dark, they are simply dreaming of the ones they love. To fall through the vast and starry night is to become nothing more than a single, silent whisper lost in the rushing wind. Just a moment ago, the world was a trembling cage of roaring engines and shaking metal. And then, with a single step into the dark, all of that noise simply vanishes. It is replaced by a rush of cold air, a sudden, breathless plunge into the deep velvet of the night. Then comes the sharp, reassuring tug of the heavy canvas harness, and the great canopy of silk blossoms overhead like a giant, pale night flower opening its petals to the stars. Suddenly, the rushing wind softens to a gentle, rushing sigh. The deafening roar of the airplanes fades into a distant, muted hum. The world becomes impossibly, beautifully quiet. Hanging suspended between the heavens and the earth, a young man looks around him. Above, the moon casts a serene, silver glow across the scattered clouds. Below, the patchwork of the French countryside is painted in soft shades of shadow and starlight. It is a stunning, breathtaking sight. It is also incredibly lonely. For a few precious, fleeting minutes, he is completely untethered from the heavy burdens of the world. He feels like a dandelion seed caught in a gentle evening breeze. He closes his eyes and lets the cool wind wash over his blackened face. It reminds him of winter nights back home, sledding down the long, snowy hill behind his childhood house, finding that same feeling of weightless, quiet rushing. He holds onto that memory, wrapping it around himself to ward off the chill of the altitude. He is just a boy, floating through a moonlit dream. Slowly, the ground rises up to meet him, hidden in the deep, ink-black shadows of ancient trees. With a soft, heavy thud, his boots touch the damp earth. The shock of the landing travels up his legs, breaking the spell of the silent flight. He rolls into the tall, wet grass, the heavy silk canopy collapsing around him like a sighing ghost. He lies there for a long moment, his chest heaving, his breath creating tiny plumes of white mist in the cool night air. He listens. He is alive. He is safe on the ground. He presses his gloved hand into the soil. It is soft and yielding, rich with the sweet scent of rain and old roots. It smells like the apple orchards of his youth, like the deep woods where he used to build forts of fallen branches on long summer afternoons. But this is not his home. This is a strange and shadowed land, a whole ocean away from the familiar creak of his own front porch. Slowly, he unbuckles his heavy harness, his fingers clumsy in the cold. He gathers the endless folds of white silk, burying the parachute beneath the tangle of thick briars, hiding his gentle arrival from the watchful night. When the rustling of the silk finally stops, the true, profound silence of the countryside sets in. It is a thick, heavy quiet, broken only by the chirping of insects and the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze. Standing alone in the dark, the young man feels a sudden, sweeping wave of isolation. The sky above is vast and indifferent, and the shadows around him are deep and impenetrable. He is just one small soul, adrift in an ocean of night. To ground himself, he reaches a hand into his pocket, his fingertips brushing the folded edge of a letter from his wife. He traces the shape of the paper, imagining the delicate loops and curves of her handwriting. He remembers her voice, soft and musical, telling him to look at the moon whenever he felt alone, because she would be looking at it, too. He tilts his head back, finding the pale silver orb glowing patiently through the branches of the trees. The same moon. The same gentle light touching them both. He takes a deep, steadying breath, drawing quiet courage from the beams that touch his face. He begins to move. Every step is a delicate, careful dance. The tall grass brushes against his legs with a sound that seems as loud as a crashing wave to his anxious ears. The ancient hedgerows tower above him like fortress walls, twisting and tangled with thorns and ivy. The world is a labyrinth of shadows, a puzzle of shapes painted in shades of charcoal and gray. He walks with his shoulders hunched, his eyes straining to pierce the darkness, listening with every fiber of his being. Then, he hears it. A sound that does not belong to the wind or the woods. A soft snap of a twig. The gentle rustle of heavy fabric against bark. He freezes. His heart beats wildly against his ribs, a frantic, fluttering bird trapped in his chest. He holds his breath, melting slowly into the shadows of a large oak tree. Is it the wind? Is it a local farmer tending to a restless animal? He peers into the gloom and sees a silhouette moving slowly against the moonlight. Just a shadow, creeping cautiously along the edge of the field. His hand trembles slightly as he reaches into his breast pocket. His fingers close around a small, cold object. It is not a weapon. It is a simple piece of stamped brass, a child's toy from a factory back home. A little metal cricket. He presses his thumb against the spring. It is such a small thing, so fragile and mundane, but right now, it is his only voice. It is the only way to reach out into the dark without tearing the fragile, protective blanket of the night. He closes his eyes and presses down. Click-clack. The sound is sharp and metallic, a tiny, strange noise that cuts through the organic whispers of the forest. It hangs in the air, a tiny beacon of hope cast out into the terrifying void. He waits. The silence stretches out, pulling tighter and tighter. The shadow across the field stops moving. The rustling ceases. The young man holds his breath, his thumb hovering over the cool brass, praying to whoever might be listening in the dark. And then, from across the damp grass, drifting softly through the moonlight. Click-clack. Click-clack. 2 responses. The breath leaves his lungs in a long, shaky sigh. It is the most beautiful sound he has ever heard. It is better than a symphony, sweeter than a choir. It is the sound of a brother. It is the sound of not being alone in the vast and unfamiliar dark. He steps cautiously out from the cover of the oak tree. The shadow approaches. As the moonlight catches them, the dark shapes resolve into the familiar, soot-blackened faces of young men. They do not shout. They do not cheer. They simply reach out, their hands grasping arms and shoulders in a fierce, quiet embrace. One of them is a boy from a neighboring farm back home, someone he used to pass on the dirt roads without a second thought. Here, in the shadowy fields of France, he is blood. He is family. You made it, one whispers, a voice so low it barely disturbs the dew on the grass. I'm here, the other replies. That is all they need to say. The terrifying, crushing weight of the solitude lifts from their shoulders, floating away on the night breeze. They sink down together into the tall grass, hidden beneath the shadow of a stone wall, just to catch their breath. One pulls a slightly damp cigarette from a tin, but does not light it, simply rolling it between his fingers for the familiar, soothing comfort of the gesture. The other offers a sip of water from a canteen. In the profound dark, they sit shoulder to shoulder, pooling their quiet resilience. As the night deepens, more tiny metallic clicks begin to echo through the orchards and the fields. Click-clack. Click-clack. They sound like strange, magical insects waking up in the dew. Each tiny sound is a spark of human connection, drawing scattered, lonely boys together in the dark. They follow the clicks, navigating the labyrinth of hedges, moving cautiously from shadow to shadow. Slowly, 2 become 3, 3 become 5. A small, ragged family of silhouettes forming a quiet, unbreakable bond in a world turned entirely upside down. They gather in a small circle in a sunken dirt lane, their blackened faces barely visible in the gloom. A medic checks a twisted ankle with gentle, probing fingers, whispering soft, soothing words of encouragement. Another boy reaches into his pack and shares a square of chocolate, breaking it into equal pieces in the dark so everyone gets a taste of sweetness. They are exhausted, disoriented, and far from the places they were supposed to be. But the paralyzing fear of the lonely descent has been replaced by a quiet, stubborn strength. They draw it from one another. Every shared glance, every soft pat on the back, every shared breath in the cold air is a testament to the everyday heroism of simply being there for someone else. The moon continues its slow, silent arc across the sky, pouring its pale light over the sleeping villages and the ancient stone churches. It bathes the boys in a soft, protective glow. The night is still vast, and the shadows are still deep, but the lonely descent is over. They have found one another. Through the whispers and the soft, rhythmic clicks of metal, they have woven a new tether, stronger than the silk that carried them from the sky. So let the night breeze rustle the leaves of the apple trees. Let the moonlight guide their cautious, gentle steps. They will move forward together, a brotherhood of shadows, carrying the warm, familiar light of home within their hearts as they walk softly into the unknown. Rest with them a moment in the tall grass. Feel the comforting weight of a friend beside you. The dark is not so scary when you have a hand to hold. Listen to the quiet rustle of the night, and know that even in the deepest shadows, the human spirit finds a way to shine. In the deepest hours of the night, long before the sun dares to rise, a single, trembling flame in a farmhouse window becomes the brightest star in the world. For countless seasons, the villages of this ancient coastline have been swallowed by an unnatural dark. When the sun dipped below the horizon, the shutters were pulled tight, the heavy wooden doors were bolted shut, and the laughter of children was hushed into breathless whispers. It was a time of heavy boots echoing on cobblestone streets, of shadows that seemed to listen, of a world holding its breath beneath a suffocating blanket of occupation. The night belonged to the strangers in uniform. But beneath the silence, behind the thick stone walls of the cottages and the damp, tangled roots of the apple orchards, the heart of the countryside never stopped beating. It merely slowed, waiting patiently in the dark for the return of the spring. Tonight, the air is different. There is a strange, electric anticipation weaving through the mist that settles over the thatched roofs. In the corner of a dimly lit kitchen, an older woman sits perfectly still, leaning close to a wooden radio cabinet. The dial glows with a faint, warm amber light, casting a soft halo over her withered hands. The voice coming through the static is far away, speaking in a calm, measured tone. It speaks in riddles and poetry, gentle phrases about the autumn wind and the blooming of flowers. To a passing stranger, it is nonsense. But to her, it is the most beautiful music she has ever heard. It is the secret language of hope. It is the promise that the long, dark winter is finally coming to an end. She turns the dial off, and the kitchen plunges back into silence. She closes her eyes and takes a deep, trembling breath. The moment she has prayed for, the moment she has dreamt of while kneading bread and mending torn shirts, is here. The sky is about to open. She stands up, moving with a quiet, practiced grace. She does not wake her sleeping husband, nor the young grandchildren tucked beneath heavy woolen blankets in the next room. This is her quiet burden to bear. She walks to the cupboard and retrieves a small, metal lantern. Her hands are steady as she strikes a single match. The sulfur hisses softly, blooming into a tiny, dancing teardrop of fire. She touches it to the wick, and the glass globe fills with a warm, golden light. She carries the lantern to a small window at the back of the house, a window that looks out over the endless, rolling pastures, far from the main road. She sets it on the sill. It is a tiny, fragile beacon against the vastness of the night. It is a quiet act of defiance, a terrifying risk, but it is also a profound act of love. She is leaving the light on for the boys falling from the sky. She is guiding them home. All across the sleeping countryside, in small, invisible ways, ordinary people are stepping out of the shadows. Down a muddy lane, an old farmer slips silently through the back door of his barn. He wears a heavy wool coat, his breath forming small, white clouds in the cool air. He knows this land better than he knows the lines on his own face. He knows where the earth dips, where the stones are loose, where the ancient hedgerows provide a canopy of impenetrable darkness. Tonight, he is not carrying a pitchfork or a pail. He is carrying a heavy pair of iron wire cutters. He moves through the damp grass with the stealth of a ghost. He does not think of himself as a hero. He is just a man who loves his village, a man who remembers what the fields looked like before the barbed wire tore through the wildflowers. He reaches a wooden pole, half hidden by ivy. He traces the thick, black communication wire with his calloused fingers. He thinks of the young men out there in the dark, the strangers coming to give him back his home. He grips the iron handles of the cutters, takes a slow, deep breath, and squeezes. With a soft, metallic snap, the wire separates. It is not a loud explosion. It is not a dramatic battle. It is simply a quiet severing of the dark. In that one, silent moment, he is blinded to shadows that have haunted his village for years. He lowers his hands, a quiet, peaceful smile touching the corners of his mouth. He turns back toward his barn, his heart feeling lighter than it has in a very long time. Further down the cobblestone path, where the old stone church stands as a silent sentinel over the town square, an elderly priest steps into the cool, damp night. He carries a heavy iron key ring. His movements are slow, burdened by years and sorrow, but his spirit is fiercely awake. He slips the largest key into the ancient iron lock of the heavy oak doors. He turns it with a satisfying, heavy click. He pushes the doors ajar, just enough to let a sliver of the moonlight spill into the nave, illuminating the dusty, worn pews. He does not ring the bell. He simply leaves the sanctuary open, a quiet refuge for any frightened soul, friend or stranger, who might need to hide among the stone pillars before the dawn breaks. This is the everyday heroism of the night. It is the brave, quiet resilience of a people who have refused to be broken. It is the schoolteacher who sneaks out to turn a wooden road sign in the opposite direction, sending heavy trucks down the wrong, muddy path. It is the young baker who unlocks the cellar doors of the village, leaving them open as silent sanctuaries. These are the invisible hands reaching out to catch the falling sky. Out in the deep pastures, a lost young paratrooper wades through the knee-high grass. He is exhausted, his uniform soaked with dew, his face still painted with the soot of the airplane. He has been wandering in the dark, his heart heavy with the fear that he is entirely alone in a hostile world. The hedgerows loom around him like prison walls, and every rustle of the wind sounds like approaching footsteps. Then, he stops. He blinks, unsure if his weary mind is playing tricks on him. Through the gap in the trees, resting gently in the distance, is a tiny pinprick of golden light. It is the lantern in the farmhouse window. To the young soldier, it is the most beautiful thing he has ever seen. It is a lighthouse in a terrifying sea of shadow. He moves toward it, his steps suddenly feeling lighter, drawn by the irresistible warmth of that single, steady flame. He approaches the stone cottage with breathless caution. He stands by the back door, listening. He raises a trembling, gloved hand, and taps lightly on the thick wooden planks. 3 soft knocks. The door opens, groaning gently on its iron hinges. The woman with the withered hand stands in the threshold. She looks at the strange, towering figure standing on her porch. She sees the heavy canvas, the strange helmet, the blackened face. But she also sees the wide, terrified eyes of a boy who is no older than her own sons. She does not scream. She does not close the door. Instead, her face softens into a look of profound, maternal tenderness. She reaches out and gently takes his arm, pulling him out of the cold night and into the warmth of her kitchen. They do not share a spoken language. The words they have known all their lives are useless here. But in the quiet glow of the lantern, they speak perfectly to one another. She motions for him to sit in the wooden chair by the extinguished hearth. She moves to the counter and pours a small cup of fresh, cold water from a ceramic pitcher. She cuts a thick slice of bread that was meant to feed her family tomorrow, bread that is precious and scarce, and places it on a folded cloth in front of him. The young soldier takes off his helmet, his hands shaking slightly. He looks at the water, then at the bread, and then up into the kind, gentle eyes of the woman standing beside him. A single tear tracks a pale line through the dark paint on his cheek. He whispers a quiet word of thanks in his native tongue. She smiles, reaching out to gently pat his shoulder, whispering a blessing in hers. In this small, humble kitchen, the weight of the entire world simply falls away. There is no war here tonight. There is only a mother and a son. There is only a frightened traveler and the quiet grace of a stranger who offered him a place to rest. This small exchange of water and bread is a sacrament of humanity, a beautiful, shining moment of compassion that outshines the darkness surrounding them. As the soldier eats, the woman returns to the window. She looks out at the lantern, watching the flame dance in the glass. She knows that the night is far from over. She knows that the true storm will arrive with the morning sun. But for now, in this suspended, quiet hour, she has done what she can. She has pushed back the dark. Across the region, hundreds of these quiet encounters are taking place. In barns, in cellars, in the shadows of ancient stone walls. The men who fell from the moonlight are finding the invisible hands that reached up to catch them. They are sharing whispered prayers, sharing the last drops of water from a canteen, sharing the profound, beautiful realization that they are fighting together. The people of the villages are not waiting to be saved, they are standing shoulder to shoulder with the strangers in the dark, armed only with their courage, their lanterns, and their endless, quiet resilience. The night air begins to shift. The heavy, impenetrable blackness of the sky slowly softens to a deep, bruised purple. The stars begin to fade, one by one, surrendering their watch to the approaching dawn. The wind sweeping off the channel carries the scent of salt and the damp earth, a fresh, clean smell that speaks of new beginnings. The flame in the lantern flickers, its fuel running low, but it does not matter anymore. Its work is done. It has guided the lost, it has comforted the weary, and it has kept the promise of the spring. Let the light burn just a little longer. Let the quiet heroes of the night rest their weary hands. They have severed the wires, they have opened the doors, and they have held the line in the darkest of hours. Close your eyes, and imagine that warm, golden glow resting on the windowsill. Feel the safety of the stone walls around you. Breathe in the scent of the fresh water and the simple bread. The world is turning, the shadows are retreating, and the long, silent night is finally coming to an end. Rest now, in the gentle warmth of the lantern's light, and listen to the soft, quiet breathing of a world preparing to wake. To be carried across a dark and restless sea is to surrender entirely to the slow, heavy breathing of the earth. As the late afternoon sun begins to slip beneath the edge of the world, a profound and gentle transformation settles over the water. This is the gloaming, that delicate, fragile hour between the daylight and the dark, when the sky bruises into deep shades of violet, indigo, and soft, fading silver. The English Channel, an ancient and temperamental stretch of water, takes on the color of slate. And out upon this vast, rolling expanse, a city of iron and wood begins to move. It is a silent, sprawling migration of souls, drifting away from the safe, solid embrace of the shore and out into the immense, unknowable mystery of the twilight. If you were to stand on the deck of one of these countless vessels, you would not hear the clatter of a grand armada. The wind simply sweeps the noise away, swallowing the roar of the engines and carrying it off into the dusk. Instead, there is only the rhythmic, mesmerizing sound of the sea. The water crests and breaks against the steel bows with a heavy, hypnotic sigh. A million whitecaps rise and fall, glowing faintly in the fading light like scattered pearls, rocking the ships back and forth in a slow, continuous cradle. Down below, hidden away from the wind and the fading sky, the air is thick, warm, and tightly enclosed. Inside the cavernous bellies of the transport ships, there is no twilight. There is only the dim, amber glow of caged bulbs, casting long, swaying shadows across the faces of the young men packed shoulder to shoulder. The air here tastes of diesel fuel, damp canvas, and the sharp, undeniable tang of sea salt. It is a strange, suspended world, entirely detached from the passage of time. In these crowded holds, a heavy, somber quiet has taken root. The nervous chatter of the morning has long since faded. The forced, bright smiles have gently melted away, replaced by the honest, weary stillness of anticipation. The ship rolls, dipping into the trough of a wave, and the entire metal floor groans, a deep, settling ache that resonates through the heavy leather of their boots and into their bones. The sea is not kind tonight. It churns and tosses with a restless energy, turning the iron decks into unsteady ground. For so many of these boys, who grew up knowing only the endless, flat expanses of wheat fields or the solid, unmoving pavement of city streets, this rolling motion is a profound physical misery. Their faces grow pale beneath the dim lights. They lean their heads back against the cold, condensation-slicked walls of the hull, closing their eyes tight against the dizzying sway of the room. Yet, Even in this shared discomfort, there is a beautiful, quiet grace. In one corner, a young man from a landlocked farming town sits with his head bowed, his hands gripping his knees so tightly his knuckles are white. The sudden drop and rise of the ship has left him breathless and incredibly hollow. He feels entirely alone in his sickness, embarrassed by his own fragility. But then, he feels a sudden, warm pressure on his shoulder. The soldier sitting next to him, a boy he only met a few weeks ago in a muddy encampment, leans closer. The friend does not speak. He does not offer hollow words of encouragement, for the roar of the engines and the churning of the water make conversation impossible anyway. Instead, he simply reaches into his webbing, pulls out a clean, slightly damp cotton handkerchief, and presses it into the sick boy's trembling hand. He leaves his own hand resting firmly, steadily on the boy's shoulder. It is an anchor. In a room that feels as though it is spinning wildly out of control, that single, heavy hand is a tether to the earth. The sick young man takes a slow, shaky breath, pressing the cool cloth to his forehead. He leans just slightly into the weight of his friend's shoulder. He is still unwell, he is still afraid, but the crushing weight of his isolation is gone. This is the everyday heroism that weaves these men together, the simple, profound act of sharing another's burden in the dark. All down the long, narrow rows, this makeshift brotherhood reveals itself in tiny, silent gestures. A canteen of water is passed gently down a line, moving from hand to hand. A fallen canvas pack is quietly lifted and returned to a lap. A boy who has managed to drift into a fitful sleep leans heavily against the chest of a stranger, and the stranger does not push him away, but simply shifts his weight to offer a softer place to rest. They are holding each other up, connected by the shared rhythm of the ship and the shared silence of their hearts. To distract themselves from the relentless swaying, they retreat into the quiet sanctuaries of their own minds. Fingers, numb from the damp chill of the metal room, reach into deep pockets to find the small, fragile tokens of home. One soldier traces the embossed lettering on a small, leather-bound Bible his mother gave him before he boarded the train. He does not open it, the light is too dim, and the ship rolls too heavily. He simply holds it in his palm, feeling the worn corners and the smooth spine, letting the physical object transport him back to the warm, sunlit pew of his childhood church. He can almost smell the polished wood and the old paper. Another boy carefully unwraps a waterproof pouch. Inside is a letter, written just yesterday, but already feeling like an artifact from another lifetime. It is a letter from a girl who promised to wait for him. He runs his thumb over the postage stamp, visualizing her walking down the paved street to the corner mailbox, her hair catching the afternoon breeze. These small touches of paper and leather are vital lifelines. They are proof that a softer, kinder world still exists on the other side of this dark water. They press these keepsakes against their heavy canvas jackets, placing the memories as close to their hearts as the layers of uniform will allow. As the evening wears on, the gloaming finally surrenders to the true, deep night. The fleet is swallowed entirely by the darkness, moving like a migration of phantoms across the water. Inside the hold, the men settle into a trance-like state. The misery of the seasickness slowly gives way to a dull, heavy exhaustion. The ship continues to rise and fall, rise and fall. The deep, mechanical thrum of the engines below them becomes a constant, vibrating hum. The crashing of the waves against the iron hull loses its violence and settles into a steady, rhythmic cadence. Thrum, crash, sway. Thrum, crash, sway. It becomes a lullaby. It is a harsh, metallic lullaby, but a lullaby nonetheless. It is the heartbeat of the fleet, pulsing through the water, echoing the collective heartbeat of the thousands of men suspended above the deep. They begin to breathe in time with the ocean. As the bow lifts into the air, they draw a slow breath in. As the ship settles heavily into the trough, they let the breath out. The shared silence deepens, transforming into something sacred. There is no longer any need for bravery, or false confidence, or nervous jokes. In the dark belly of the ship, stripped of the daylight and the noise of the world, they are beautifully, entirely human. They are just young men, wrapped in heavy wool, being rocked by the eternal motion of the sea. They do not know what the dawn will bring. They do not know what the distant shore looks like, or what the morning sky will hold. But in this quiet, suspended hour, they do not have to know. They only have to exist. They only have to let the ship carry them forward through the dark. The mind, weary from anxiety, begins to let go. The tight grip on the canvas straps slowly loosens. Shoulders drop. Chins rest gently on the tops of heavy packs. The rhythmic churning of the waves washes over their fears, smoothing them out like footprints in wet sand. Let the ocean hold them now. Let the deep, vibrating hum of the iron hull soothe their restless spirits. The journey is somber, yes, but it is also a quiet cradle of time, a brief, floating sanctuary between the life they left behind and the history waiting in the mist. Breathe with them in the dim, amber light. Feel the gentle rise and fall of the dark water beneath you. The world is vast, the night is long, but they are not alone. They are surrounded by brothers, moving together through the gloaming, held safe in the heavy, rocking embrace of the sea. Rest now, and let the gentle, rhythmic churning carry you softly through the night. There is a single, fragile breath drawn by the world just before the night surrenders to the sun. If you watch the eastern horizon very closely, over the vast and restless expanse of the sea, you will see the absolute blackness of the night begin to soften. It does not happen all at once. It is a slow, gentle easing, like a heavy theater curtain being drawn back by an invisible, trembling hand. The stars, which have stood as silent, silver guardians over the sprawling fleet all through the dark, begin to fade. They blink out one by one, giving way to a deep, bruised indigo that stretches across the curve of the earth. The night is retreating, pulling its dark cloak back across the channel, and leaving in its wake the cold, clean air of a brand new day. On the decks of the great transport ships, the men feel this shift before they can truly see it. The air changes. The damp, heavy wind that howled through the midnight hours loses its bitter edge, softening into a cool, steady breeze that smells of salt and deep, churning water. The relentless, punishing rhythm of the waves seems to find a steadier, calmer cadence. And in this subtle shift of the wind and the water, a quiet realization settles over the thousands of weary souls resting in the shadows. The long, agonizing wait of the night is finally over. The morning has arrived. Slowly, the shadows begin to untangle. The huddled shapes on the wet steel decks resolve into the familiar silhouettes of young men. They stand up, their movements slow and stiff, weighed down by the heavy, damp canvas of their uniforms and the deep exhaustion that settles in the bones when sleep has been impossible. They lean against the cold metal railings, looking out over the water. There is no talking. The silence of the night simply stretches forward into the dawn. They are standing on the threshold of history, but in this quiet hour, they are just boys watching the sky change color. A young man from a quiet valley far away rests his chin on his crossed arms, staring eastward. As the indigo sky slowly bleeds into a pale, pearlescent gray, he does not see the ocean. He sees the rolling hills of his home. He remembers the profound, beautiful quiet of his own house just before dawn, when the only sound was the soft ticking of the clock in the hallway and the gentle breathing of the dog sleeping by the stove. He remembers walking out onto the porch, a warm cup of coffee in his hands, watching the morning mist rise off the tall grass. He holds onto that memory with everything he has. He wraps the peace of that distant morning around his heart, a gentle, invisible armor against the uncertainty of the sea. The light begins to swell, moving from gray to a soft, delicate pink. It touches the crests of the waves, turning the whitecaps into shimmering strokes of pale gold. And then, the heavy, muffled commands are given. It is time to move. The transition from the massive, towering transport ships to the small, flat-bottomed landing craft is a quiet, rhythmic dance. The men climb over the railings, their heavy boots finding the thick, rough ropes of the cargo nets hanging down the sides of the steel hulls. They descend slowly in the half-light, a waterfall of olive drab moving downward toward the churning water. It is a precarious, swaying journey, but they are not alone. As one boy struggles to find a foothold, the man beneath him reaches up, his gloved hand firmly guiding the heavy boot into the woven square of rope. It is a tiny, unspoken gesture. "I have you," the touch says. "You will not fall." When they finally step into the small, open boats, they are packed tightly together, shoulder to shoulder, knee to knee. The flat metal floors vibrate with the low, steady thrum of the engines. They are so close that they can feel the synchronized rise and fall of each other's breathing. As the small craft detach from the motherships and begin to circle in the water, waiting for their place in the invisible line, the sky above them bursts into the full, breathtaking glory of the dawn. The clouds, strung low across the horizon, catch the rising sun, painting the heavens in magnificent strokes of amber, violet, and burning gold. It is a sky so beautiful it almost hurts to look at it. The water reflects these colors, transforming the dark, terrifying channel into a canvas of shimmering light. The world is waking up, indifferent to the heavy steel and the anxious hearts it carries. Nature simply offers her light, impartial and endlessly graceful. Inside the small, rocking boat, the sea spray occasionally splashes over the square bow, misting the air with cold salt water. A boy, his face pale and his helmet pulled low over his eyes, realizes that his hands are trembling. He tries to clench them into fists, embarrassed by his own fear, trying to hide his shaking fingers in the folds of his wet canvas jacket. But the man beside him sees. He is an older soldier, a man with gentle, tired eyes and a quiet strength about him. He does not say a word to draw attention. He simply reaches out and places his own large, calloused hand over the boy's trembling fists. He presses down with a warm, steadying pressure. He leaves his hand there as the boat pitches and rolls. The boy looks up, and the older man offers a slow, reassuring nod. In the golden light of the morning, that simple, silent touch is an act of profound, everyday heroism. It is the transfer of courage from one beating heart to another. As the small boats finally turn and begin their long, steady run toward the south, the men instinctively reach toward their chests. Beneath the heavy webbing, beneath the canvas and the wool, safely tucked against their beating hearts, lie the letters. They press their hands to their pockets, feeling the crinkled paper. In the quiet sanctuary of their minds, they send a final, whispered message back across the ocean. They know that in their hometowns, the sun has not yet risen. Their mothers and wives and fathers are still sleeping, safe and warm in the deep, quiet night. "Sleep well," they whisper into the sea breeze. "Do not worry for me. I am watching the sunrise." They draw a boundless, quiet resilience from the love folded inside those fragile envelopes. Ahead of them, the sea is covered in a delicate, rolling mist. It is a pale, silver fog that clings to the surface of the water, glowing from within as the sun climbs higher behind them. It makes the world feel dreamlike, suspended between reality and imagination. The boats cut through this mist, their flat bows parting the glowing vapor like a curtain. And then, slowly, majestically, the mist begins to thin. Through the silver veil, a dark, solid line begins to form on the horizon. At first, it is just a shadow, a heavy stroke of charcoal against the pale morning sky. But as the boats push closer, the shadow resolves into shape and texture. It is the coastline. There are no terrifying monsters here. There is only the earth. High, towering bluffs of chalk and stone rise gracefully from the sea, crowned with the deep, vibrant green of spring grass. The long, curving stretch of the sandy beach lies quietly at their feet, resting peacefully beneath the lapping waves. It looks so normal. It looks so profoundly, heartbreakingly beautiful. It is just a shoreline, much like the shorelines they knew as children, where they used to collect shells and watch the tide roll in. A profound, breathless awe sweeps through the small wooden boats. The men stare at the looming cliffs, their eyes wide, their lips slightly parted. The fear, the seasickness, the heavy, agonizing weight of the night, all of it evaporates for a single, transcendent moment. They are entirely captivated by the majestic beauty of the waking world. To see solid ground after the endless, shifting chaos of the water is a miracle. It is a terrifying beauty, because they know what this land means, they know what is waiting for them in the tall grass. But in this exact second, before the storm breaks, there is only the quiet, sublime majesty of the earth meeting the sea. The wind rustles the collars of their jackets. The engine hums its low, steady vibration. The water shushes gently against the sides of the boat. No one speaks. There are no words grand enough to fill this space. They simply stand shoulder to shoulder, a brotherhood of silent witnesses, bathed in the soft, pink light of the dawn. They are part of this morning now. Their heartbeats have synchronized with the rhythm of the tide. Their breaths rise and fall with the gentle swelling of the sea. They are held in a perfect, fragile bubble of peace, floating on a golden ocean, moving steadily toward the towering cliffs. So let the first colors of morning wash over them. Let the pale pinks and the soft gold soothe their weary eyes. Let the mist wrap them in a gentle, protective embrace just a little while longer. The long, dark night has finally passed. The sun is shining, the world is awake, and they are not alone. Breathe in the cool, salty air. Feel the steady, comforting presence of the friend standing beside you. Look out at the beautiful, quiet shoreline emerging from the fog. Rest your mind in this pocket of perfect stillness. Let the light fill you with a quiet, unwavering grace, and know that whatever the day may bring, the dawn was breathtaking, and they faced it together. To step from the iron shelter of a boat into the vast, freezing embrace of the sea is a moment of profound and beautiful surrender. For hours, the small, flat-bottomed craft have been their entire world. The metal walls provided a boundary, a hard, vibrating shell that separated them from the deep, restless water of the channel. But as the boats finally slow, grinding softly against the hidden sandbars beneath the surface, that boundary must vanish. The heavy iron ramp at the front of the boat begins to lower with a slow, mechanical groan. It falls forward, splashing into the rolling surf with a burst of white foam, and suddenly, the world breaks wide open. There are no more walls. There is only the pale morning sky, the towering bluffs in the distance, and the great, churning expanse of the ocean waiting to meet them. Standing at the edge of that lowered ramp, the young men pause for just a fraction of a heartbeat. It is not hesitation born of cowardice, it is the natural, human reverence for the unknown. They look down at the water swirling over the metal grating. It is a deep, bruised shade of green, capped with sea foam, pulling and pushing with the ancient, unstoppable rhythm of the tide. The wind coming off the waves is sharp and cold, biting at their cheeks and rustling the heavy collars of their woolen jackets. In this fleeting second, suspended between the boat and the sea, they are so incredibly vulnerable. They are not statues of bronze or figures in a history book. They are simply boys, standing at the edge of the water, gathering every ounce of quiet courage they possess. And then, the first boot steps forward. The transition from the rigid metal to the shifting, liquid world is a shock to the senses. The water of the English Channel is fiercely, breathlessly cold. As they step off the ramp, the ocean rushes up to meet them, soaking instantly through their leather boots, their thick woolen trousers, their heavy canvas leggings. The cold steals the breath right out from their lungs in a sudden, sharp gasp. It is an elemental awakening. The water wraps around their calves, then their knees, and for some, as they step into unexpected depressions in the sand, it rushes all the way up to their waists. Instantly, the heavy gear they carry becomes a monumental burden. The thick wool absorbs the salt water like a sponge, doubling in weight. The canvas packs on their backs, filled with rations, extra socks, and precious letters, drag at their shoulders. Every single step forward requires a deliberate, exhausting effort of will. The ocean is not an enemy, but it is a vast, indifferent force, pulling at their legs, trying to sweep them off balance with every rolling wave. It is a slow, agonizing wade through a world of resistance. To survive the biting cold and the crushing weight, the mind performs a beautiful, protective magic. As a young man pushes his legs through the freezing surf, he closes his eyes for just a moment and sends his thoughts far away. He does not think of the looming bluffs ahead. Instead, he remembers the gentle, sun-warmed waters of a lake back in the Midwest. He remembers the feeling of a hot July afternoon, diving off a wooden dock with his brothers, the water feeling like cool silk against his skin. He remembers the sound of cicadas humming in the trees and the smell of pine needles baking in the sun. He wraps that warm, golden memory tightly around his shivering shoulders, using the ghost of a summer day to insulate his heart against the freezing tide. Another boy, his face pale and his teeth chattering uncontrollably, reaches a numb, gloved hand up to his chest. Tucked safely inside his jacket, wrapped carefully in layers of waterproof wax paper, is a letter from his mother. It arrived just days before they boarded the ships. He knows the words by heart. He knows that in the second paragraph, she told him to always make sure he wore his warm socks, and that she was keeping a candle lit in the kitchen window until he came home. He presses his hand against the crinkling paper beneath his canvas webbing. The letter is a tether. It is a lifeline stretching across thousands of miles of ocean, pulling him forward. He imagines her standing in that warm kitchen, and he takes another heavy, sloshing step through the water, driven entirely by the quiet, stubborn desire to walk back through her front door. The ocean floor beneath them is a treacherous landscape of its own. It is not a flat, even surface, but a shifting, unpredictable terrain of ribbed sand, sudden drop-offs, and hidden currents. As the waves crash against their chests, the water lifts them slightly, only to drop them back down onto unsure footing. The sand shifts and gives way beneath the heavy tread of their boots, offering no solid purchase. In the midst of this turbulent wading, a young soldier suddenly loses his balance. Weighed down by the massive canvas pack on his back, his foot slips on a hidden ridge of sand. The current catches him, and he tips backward, the freezing water rushing over his shoulders and up to his chin. Panic, cold and sharp, flares in his chest. He thrashes his arms, but the weight of the waterlogged wool and the heavy gear is too much. He is being pulled under. But he does not fall. Before the water can close over his helmet, a pair of hands violently grips the thick canvas straps of his webbing. The soldier waiting beside him, a boy whose name he barely knows, plants his own boots deep into the shifting sand, bracing himself against the tide. With a surge of desperate, adrenaline-fueled strength, the stranger hauls the falling boy upward, pulling him back to his feet. The rescued boy stands there, coughing, seawater streaming down his face, his eyes wide with shock. The friend who caught him does not let go. He keeps one heavy, stabilizing hand firmly gripped on the boy's shoulder. They lock eyes through the mist and the sea spray. There is no time for profound speeches of gratitude, and the roaring of the surf is too loud for whispers anyway. The savior simply gives the boy's shoulder a firm, reassuring squeeze, a gesture that says, "I have you. You are not going down today." The boy nods, takes a deep, ragged breath, and together, shoulder to shoulder, they lean back into the resistance of the water. This is the pure, unfiltered essence of everyday heroism. It is not found in grand, sweeping gestures or fearless charges. It is found right here, in the freezing, chest-high water, in the simple, beautiful act of refusing to let the man beside you fall. They become a human chain of shared resilience, a brotherhood bound not by rank or duty, but by a desperate, loving need to see each other safely to the shore. If one stumbles, 3 hands reach out to catch him. If one slows from exhaustion, the man behind him gently pushes on his canvas pack, offering his own strength to keep them both moving forward. As they wade closer to the land, the water begins to recede, dropping from their chests to their waists, and then to their knees. The movement becomes less about fighting the current and more about battling the sheer, exhausting gravity of their soaked uniforms. Their legs feel like they are made of lead. The shifting sand beneath the water gives way to the firmer, wetter sand of the tidal flats. They lift their heads, wiping the stinging salt water from their eyes, and look at the world rising up before them. The towering bluffs of Normandy emerge fully from the morning mist. They are majestic, sweeping cliffs of earth and stone, crowned with a vibrant, startling green. In the pale light of the dawn, they look almost serene, a quiet, sleeping giant waking up to the sound of the surf. The beach stretches out wide and vast, a seemingly endless expanse of smooth, wet sand reflecting the gray and pink hues of the morning sky. To the exhausted, freezing boys emerging from the ocean, this stretch of sand is both a sanctuary and a terrifying threshold. It is the solid earth they have been praying for through a long, agonizing night of seasickness, but it is also the beginning of the true unknown. They drag themselves out of the surf, their boots leaving deep, heavy imprints in the pristine sand. The sound of the water sloshing in their boots mixes with their heavy, rhythmic breathing. They are drenched, shivering, and carrying a weight that seems impossible for human shoulders to bear. Yet, there is a profound, undeniable beauty in their forward motion. It is the beauty of the human spirit refusing to be washed away. A young man pauses just at the edge of the waterline. He looks down at the ground. For the first time in days, the world beneath his feet is not swaying, rolling, or vibrating with the hum of engines. It is solid. He kneels down, ignoring the cold wetness seeping through his woolen trousers, and presses his bare hand flat against the damp sand. He feels the gritty texture, the cold firmness of the earth. It is France. It is a foreign shore, miles and miles away from the warm, familiar dirt of his own backyard, but it is ground. He closes his eyes and takes a deep breath, drawing the quiet strength of the earth up into his shivering body. He stands slowly, adjusting the heavy straps on his shoulders. He looks to his left and his right, seeing the long line of his brothers emerging from the sea, a beautiful, ragged wave of green and brown slowly overtaking the beach. They are walking with their heads bowed against the wind, their shoulders hunched, taking one deliberate, agonizing step at a time. There is no rush in this moment. There is only the slow, steady rhythm of survival. They have conquered the freezing water. They have held each other up in the shifting, treacherous tides. They have carried the memories of their mothers, their fathers, and their sweethearts safely across the dark expanse of the channel. Now, they are here. The footsteps they leave in the wet sand are the quiet, indelible marks of their courage. Let them walk slowly up the shore. Let the cold water drip from their heavy jackets and soak gently back into the earth. The ocean has tested them, and they have passed through its freezing embrace with their humanity beautifully, perfectly intact. Breathe with them as they take those final, heavy steps onto the land. Feel the solid earth beneath your own feet. Listen to the gentle, rhythmic crashing of the waves falling away behind them. The journey through the water is over. They have arrived. Rest your mind in the quiet strength of their shared steps, and know that even in the most vulnerable, freezing moments, the warmth of the human heart is enough to light the way. To finally feel the solid earth beneath your feet after an eternity of restless ocean is to wake up inside a dream you never wanted to have. The sand of Normandy is fine and pale, packed hard by the retreating tide and shimmering beneath the soft, gray light of the early morning. As the young men drag themselves from the freezing surf, the water heavily releasing its grip on their wool uniforms, they step into a world that feels entirely detached from reality. A thick, silvery mist clings to the shoreline, softening the harsh edges of the landscape and wrapping the sprawling beach in a hushed, ghostly embrace. The mist acts as a heavy blanket, muffling the violent symphony of the world, filtering the chaos down into a surreal, breathless quiet. In this suspended, foggy space, time simply stops. The furious, rushing urgency that pushed them out of the boats dissolves into the profound, agonizing gravity of the present moment. They drop to their knees in the shallow water, or collapse onto the wet, ribbed sand, their chests heaving with an exhaustion so deep it settles into the very marrow of their bones. They are no longer soldiers marching in a grand, sweeping formation. They are just boys, scattered across the shoreline like driftwood, trying desperately to remember how to breathe. The air tastes heavily of salt and wet iron. It fills their burning lungs, a sharp, cold reminder that they are alive. And in this incredibly vulnerable, breathless space upon the sand, the truest nature of the human spirit begins to quietly unfold. A boy from the sprawling, sun-baked plains of the Southwest finds himself lying behind a small ridge of sand, shoulder to shoulder with a boy from the crowded, noisy streets of a faraway city. They have never spoken before. They do not know each other's names, or the sound of each other's laughter. But as they press their faces into the damp earth, seeking whatever fragile shelter the beach can offer, the differences between them simply wash away into the tide. The boy from the plains is shivering uncontrollably, the freezing water of the channel having stolen the warmth from his blood. His hands shake so violently that he cannot unfasten the heavy, sodden canvas strap of his pack that is digging painfully into his neck. The city boy sees this. He does not say a word. He simply reaches over, his own hands numb and slow, and gently works the stubborn brass buckle free. He slips the heavy canvas off his new friend's shoulder, pulling the weight away. Then, he shifts his own body just a few inches, placing himself between the shivering boy and the biting wind blowing off the sea. It is a tiny, almost invisible act of sacrifice. It goes entirely unnoticed by the wider world. But to the boy from the plains, that small shift in the sand, that silent offering of warmth and protection, is the most profound lifeline he has ever known. It is the gentle, steadying hand of everyday heroism, reaching out through the mist. All across the shoreline, these quiet ripples of compassion move through the exhausted men. When the paralyzing fear threatens to overtake a young mind, when the overwhelming surrealness of the beach becomes too heavy to bear, they do not look to the sky for salvation. They look to the man beside them. A soldier, his helmet lost somewhere in the churning waves, crawls forward through the shifting sand. His bare head is exposed to the cold, damp air, and his eyes are wide with the dizzying shock of the morning. From behind a rusted, twisted piece of metal debris, an older sergeant reaches out and grabs him by the shoulder, pulling him into the small pocket of safety. The sergeant reaches beneath his own heavy steel helmet and pulls off a knitted, woolen cap, a dark green beanie made by his wife's own hands, holding the faint, phantom scent of the cedar chest back home. Without a moment of hesitation, he presses the warm wool onto the younger boy's cold head, pulling it down snugly over his ears. "Keep it," the older man whispers, his voice a calm, low rumble that cuts beautifully through the ringing in the boy's ears. "You need it more than me. Just catch your breath." The mother's knitting, made with love in a quiet parlor thousands of miles away, now warms the head of a frightened stranger on a foreign beach. It is a beautiful, unbreakable thread connecting a peaceful home to the edge of the world. To anchor themselves in this disorienting mist, the men retreat deep into the quiet sanctuaries of their memories. The physical world around them is terrifying and strange, but the landscape of their hearts remains safe, familiar, and endlessly warm. The tides of memory wash over them, far stronger and far kinder than the freezing tides of the channel. A young man lies flat against the cool, wet sand, his cheek pressed to the earth. He closes his eyes and consciously blocks out the beach. He reaches into his soaked jacket, his fingers finding the thick, waxed paper pouch that holds a single photograph of his sweetheart. He does not need to look at it, the image is perfectly, permanently burned into his mind. She is laughing, her head thrown back, standing in a field of tall, golden grass on a late summer afternoon. He focuses all of his fading energy on the sound of that laugh. He imagines it floating on the wind, clear and bright like a silver bell. He imagines the warmth of the sun on his face, the smell of the dry earth, the feeling of her hand slipping gently into his. He builds a fortress out of that memory, a quiet, beautiful place where the cold and the fear cannot reach him. He breathes in the salt air, but in his mind, he is breathing in the sweet scent of summer hay. He is holding on to love, and love is holding him to the earth. Moving slowly, deliberately through the scattered men is a medic. He carries no weapon, only a heavy canvas bag marked with a faded red cross. He is a ghost of mercy walking through the mist. He does not run, he glides, his movements calm, practiced, and deeply soothing. He kneels beside a boy who is clutching a wounded arm, his face pale and tight with pain. The medic does not speak of the wound. He does not use harsh, clinical words. Instead, he speaks to the boy as a father would speak to a child waking from a nightmare. He rests a gentle, warm hand on the boy's forehead, smoothing back the damp, sandy hair. "You're all right," the medic whispers, his voice a soft, hypnotic lullaby. "You're going to be just fine. I've got you. Think about home for me. Tell me about your front porch." As he carefully, tenderly wraps a clean, white bandage around the arm, he listens to the boy whisper about a wooden porch swing, about a dog named Buster, about the way the streetlights flicker on just as the sun goes down. The medic nods slowly, his eyes full of infinite, quiet compassion. He absorbs the boy's fear, replacing it with his own steady, unwavering calm. He leaves the boy resting against a mound of sand, a little warmer, a little braver, tethered back to the world by the simple, profound grace of a healing touch. The beach is a landscape of impossible contrasts. There is the cold, unyielding sand, and there is the warm, soft breath of the men resting upon it. There is the vast, intimidating expanse of the cliffs looming ahead, and there is the tiny, miraculous intimacy of two friends sharing a single, damp cigarette behind a pile of shale. One soldier cups his hands carefully around a flickering match, creating a tiny, glowing shelter against the morning wind. He lights the cigarette and passes it to his friend, a boy who is staring blankly out at the gray water. The friend takes a slow, deep drag, the small red ember illuminating his soot-stained face for just a fraction of a second. The familiar, bitter taste of the tobacco is a sudden, sharp reminder of life before the boats. It is a taste of quiet evenings sitting on the bumper of a car, of long walks home from the movie theater, of normal, beautiful, mundane life. He exhales, the smoke mingling with the ocean mist, and offers a tiny, exhausted smile. "Almost feels like a Tuesday morning back home," he whispers, his voice raspy and dry. His friend leans his head back against the sand and closes his eyes. "Yeah. Almost." It is a gentle, protective lie. It is a shared illusion that softens the jagged edges of reality. They are using their imaginations to build a bridge over the terrifying expanse of the beach, walking across it together in their minds. Slowly, the paralysis of the shoreline begins to lift. The surreal, breathless moment of arrival has passed. The men have caught their breath. They have found their lifelines in the strangers lying next to them. They have drawn quiet, immense strength from the letters hidden in their pockets and the memories folded carefully into their hearts. They begin to stir. The movement is slow, cautious, and incredibly heavy. They help each other to their feet, their hands gripping wet canvas and thick leather belts, hauling one another up from the sand. They brush the wet earth from their knees. They look at the towering bluffs waiting for them, rising up into the gray sky like an ancient wall. They do not charge with a fierce, dramatic cry. They move forward with a quiet, stubborn resilience. They walk with the slow, deliberate grace of men who are carrying the weight of the entire world on their shoulders, yet refuse to let it crush them. Every step they take in the shifting sand is a testament to the love that brought them here. They are walking for the mothers waiting by the radio, for the wives looking at the moon, for the children who will only ever know this beach through the gentle stories told years later. Let the mist hold them a little longer. Let the gentle, rhythmic crashing of the waves mask the sound of their heavy boots. They have survived the terrifying crossing. They have found their footing on the edge of the world. Through the quiet sacrifices and the gentle hands of strangers, they have remembered exactly who they are. Breathe in the cool, gray morning. Feel the steadfast presence of the brotherhood moving slowly, beautifully up the shore. The ocean is behind them now, its restless tides left to wash away the footprints in the sand. They carry the true tides within them, the deep, unending currents of memory and love. Rest your mind in the quiet courage of their journey. Let the soothing mist settle over the beach, and know that even on the most difficult shores, the human heart will always find a way to light the dark. To stand at the base of a towering, ancient cliff is to feel the overwhelming weight of the earth pressing gently, heavily, against the morning sky. Where the shifting sands finally surrender to the land, a great wall of jagged stone rises up from the mist. It is an imposing, silent giant, carved by centuries of wind and sea, its face etched with deep crevices and dark, damp shadows. For the boys who have just crossed the churning water, this wall is the edge of the world. It is a boundary of cold rock stretching up into the clouds, and different to the fragile, exhausted humans standing at its feet. The ocean is behind them, restless and cold, and the only way forward is up into the sky. They stand at the base, their heads tilted back, rainwater and sea spray dripping from the brims of their helmets. They do not speak. The sheer verticality of the cliff commands a profound, breathless silence. To look up at that immense height is to feel incredibly small, to realize that the human body is just a fragile collection of breath and bone against the absolute permanence of the stone. But there is no turning back. The tide is washing away their footprints in the sand, and the quiet promise they made to one another on the dark ship still echoes in their hearts. Slowly, deliberately, the first hands reach out. Thick, wet leather gloves, clumsy and heavy from the ocean, are quietly pulled off and tucked into belts. This climb requires the pure, raw honesty of skin against stone. A young man reaches up, his bare fingertips finding a narrow, jagged ledge. The rock is freezing. It bites into his skin, rough and unyielding, covered in a thin, slick layer of morning dew and ancient sea salt. He presses his fingers into the crevice, feeling the sharp edges of the granite. He closes his eyes and takes a slow, deep breath, pulling the scent of the wet earth deep into his lungs. He tests his weight, his muscles trembling slightly with exhaustion, and then he pulls. The ascent begins not with a shout, but with a collective, synchronized intake of breath. The men spread out along the base of the cliff, becoming a slow, agonizing wave of green and brown moving upward against the gray rock. It is an excruciatingly intimate struggle. Every inch of progress is earned through burning muscles and scraped knuckles. They press their chests against the cold stone, flattening themselves against the face of the earth, as if trying to melt into the mountain itself. The heavy, wet wool of their uniforms drags at them like an invisible anchor. The canvas packs on their backs, filled with the precious letters from home and the simple necessities of survival, feel like boulders pulling them backward toward the sea. But they do not stop. They move with agonizing, beautiful determination, finding footholds in tiny cracks, wedging their boots into the narrowest of ledges. In the middle of the climb, a boy who has lived his entire life in the flat, endless expanses of the prairie finds himself frozen. He is suspended halfway between the crashing surf and the unseen summit. He makes the mistake of looking down. The ground is dizzyingly far away, the ocean swirling below like a dark, hungry mouth. A sudden, paralyzing wave of vertigo washes over him. His breathing becomes shallow and frantic. His fingers, white-knuckled and scraped, begin to slip against the wet stone. He cannot move his foot. He cannot pull himself up. The vast, terrifying emptiness of the air around him threatens to pull him off the wall. But he is not climbing alone. Just a few feet below him, an older soldier sees the boy's trembling legs. He sees the desperate, frozen grip of his hands. The older man does not yell. He does not offer a harsh command. Instead, he reaches up with one steady, calloused hand and firmly grasps the heel of the terrified boy's heavy boot. "I'm right here," the older man whispers, his voice carrying softly over the sound of the wind. "I have you. Do not look at the water. Look at the rock. Just find the next groove. I will hold your foot until you do." The touch of that hand on his heel is a miracle. It is a sudden, solid foundation in a world made entirely of thin air and falling. The boy takes a ragged, shuddering breath. He presses his forehead against the cold, damp cliff face, closing his eyes to shut out the dizzying height. He focuses entirely on the warmth of the hand holding his boot. He thinks of his father's hand, steady and strong, guiding him as he learned to ride a bicycle down a dusty gravel road. He draws that memory into his burning arms, finding a reservoir of strength he did not know he possessed. He reaches his right hand up, his fingertips blindly searching the stone until they find a deep, secure hollow. He pulls. The older man gently guides the boot up to the next ledge, supporting the boy's weight until he is secure. It is a quiet, beautiful pack made in the thin morning air. They are not climbing for the brass medals polished in velvet boxes. They are not climbing for the sweeping glory written in history books. They are climbing entirely for each other. They are fueled by a desperate, unwavering promise to not let the man beside them fall. Thick, heavy ropes, soaked with seawater and rough with hemp, are tossed down from the men who have pushed ahead. These ropes become lifelines, the physical veins of their brotherhood connecting the top of the world to the bottom. A young man wraps the coarse rope around his forearm, the fibers biting into his skin. He feels the tension in the line, knowing that at the other end, hidden in the mist above, a friend is bracing his boots against the earth, holding the weight with everything he has. To pull on that rope is to engage in a profound act of trust. Every heave, every agonizing drag up the rock face, is a silent conversation. Pull, the rope says. I am holding you. And the man below answers with the sheer effort of his burning muscles. I am coming. I will not let your effort be in vain. As they press higher into the mist, the physical world begins to fade away. The cold stone, the stinging cuts on their hands, the terrifying drop beneath them, it all blurs into a singular, rhythmic mantra of survival. Reach. Grip. Pull. Breathe. To endure the pain in their shoulders and the desperate burning in their lungs, they retreat into the quietest, safest corners of their minds. A soldier from a bustling city neighborhood presses his cheek against the mossy stone and imagines the cool, smooth brick of his apartment building on a hot summer night. He remembers the sound of his mother humming softly in the kitchen, the smell of garlic and tomatoes simmering on the stove. He uses that humming as a metronome for his climbing, pacing his movements to the gentle song of his childhood. Another boy feels the thick, folded letter in his breast pocket pressing hard against his ribs every time he pulls himself flush against the cliff. The paper is likely damp now, the ink perhaps starting to run, but the words are etched permanently into his soul. It is a letter from his young wife, telling him about the small garden she planted in the backyard, about how the tomatoes are finally turning red. With every grueling inch he ascends, he is climbing toward that garden. He is climbing toward the quiet, beautiful, ordinary life that is waiting for him on the other side of this dark morning. He refuses to let this cold stone be the end of his story. The wind picks up, swirling the mist around them like fragile ghosts. It catches the loose straps of their webbing and chills the sweat on their necks. But there is a strange, unexpected peace to be found here on the vertical face of the earth. Suspended between the sky and the sea, there is no past and no future. There is only the exact moment of the hand finding the hold. There is only the shared breath of the men suffering together in the gray light. They are a constellation of quiet heroism, scattered across the dark rock. When a man's grip falters, a hand from the side reaches out to steady his shoulder. When a boot slips, a shoulder is offered from below to act as a stepping stone. They are building a human ladder, woven together by exhausted muscles and boundless love. They share the weight of the packs, they share the tension of the ropes, they share the terrifying, dizzying vulnerability of the climb. And then, finally, the angle of the rock begins to change. The vertical wall gently yields, sloping inward. The rough, jagged granite gives way to softer earth, to tangled roots and damp, trampled grass. The first hands reach over the precipice, their scraped and bleeding fingertips digging furiously into the soft soil of the summit. There is no triumphant roar as they pull themselves over the edge. There is no glorious flag waving. There is only the heavy, collapsing thud of exhausted bodies falling into the wet grass. They pull themselves up over the lip of the cliff and simply roll onto their backs, staring up at the vast, gray canopy of the morning sky. The softness of the earth beneath them is an unimaginable luxury. After the unyielding cruelty of the cold stone, the damp grass feels like a bed of feathers. They lie there, their chests heaving violently, their eyes wide and unfocused, simply letting the earth hold them. A hand reaches out through the tall grass, searching blindly. It finds another hand, equally bruised and scraped, and their fingers entwine. The boy from the prairie and the older man who held his boot lie side by side, staring at the clouds. They do not speak. The quiet, desperate promise has been kept. They carried each other up the mountain, and they have arrived together. Slowly, the cliff edge fills with the exhausted silhouettes of the men who conquered the stone. They sit up, their heads bowed, resting their heavy helmets against their knees. They pull off their leather gloves and look at their raw, trembling fingertips. Those small, fragile hands have performed a miracle. They have defied gravity, they have defied fear, and they have pulled the weight of a changing world up from the dark water. Let them rest in the damp grass a little while longer. Let the cool morning breeze soothe their burning muscles and dry the sweat from their brows. They have scaled the unscalable wall. They have proven that the human spirit, when bound by love and a quiet promise to a brother, is stronger than the oldest, hardest stone on earth. Breathe with them now, a deep, slow breath of the high, clean air. Feel the solid, flat ground beneath you. The agonizing climb is over. The edge of the world has been crossed. Rest your mind in the gentle, swaying grass of the summit, and know that no matter how steep the wall, no matter how cold the stone, there is always a hand reaching out in the mist, waiting to pull you safely into the light. Even in the deepest shadows of a broken world, there is always a gentle hand reaching out to put the pieces back together. Where the great, churning ocean meets the pale and shifting sand, a quiet transformation has taken hold. The overwhelming rush of the morning has slowly drifted away, carried off by the same salty wind that pushes the gray clouds across the sky. What remains on the shoreline is a profound, breathtaking stillness. The beach is no longer a threshold of the unknown, it has become a vast, open-air sanctuary beneath the mist. Scattered across the damp earth, resting against mounds of sand and pieces of rusted iron, are the boys who cannot walk any further. They are exhausted, they are hurt, and they are incredibly fragile. But they are not alone. Moving through the thick, silvery fog are figures who do not carry weapons. They walk with a different kind of grace, a slow, deliberate cadence that speaks not of forward motion, but of deep, pausing compassion. They carry canvas bags slung over their heavy woolen shoulders, marked only by a simple cross. These are the healers. They are the quiet angels of the shoreline, descending into the damp chill of the morning to offer the warmest, most beautiful light the human spirit can provide. A medic steps softly through the wet sand, his boots making a gentle, rhythmic shushing sound. He is just a young man himself, perhaps a pharmacy clerk from a quiet corner of the world, or a boy who used to bandage the scraped knees of his younger siblings. His face is pale and streaked with the soot of the journey, but his eyes are an ocean of infinite, unwavering calm. He does not see uniforms. He does not see a grand, sweeping tide of history. He only sees a brother who is hurting. He kneels beside a boy resting in the shallow dip of a sand dune. The boy is trembling, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps, his eyes wide with a fear that has nothing to do with the physical pain in his leg, and everything to do with the terrifying distance between this cold beach and his warm home. He is lost in the dark, frightening labyrinth of his own shock. The medic does not speak right away. He simply takes off his heavy, wet canvas gloves, letting them fall into the sand. He needs his bare hands for this. He reaches out and gently, so very gently, rests his warm palm against the boy's cold, clammy cheek. It is a touch of pure magic. It is the sudden, anchoring weight of love in a world that feels as though it is spinning completely out of control. The boy flinches for a fraction of a second, and then, feeling the profound tenderness in those fingertips, he leans his face into the medic's hand. He closes his eyes, and a single, heavy tear slips through his lashes, tracing a clean path through the dirt on his face. "I've got you," the medic whispers. His voice is a low, soothing hum, softer than the ocean waves crashing behind them. "You're right here with me. You are safe now. Just look at me." He begins his work. His hands move with a practiced, beautiful rhythm. There is no frantic rushing, no sharp movements that might startle the fragile soul in front of him. He unwraps a roll of clean, white cotton bandage. In the gray, muddy landscape of the shoreline, that brilliant white cloth looks like a piece of the clouds, a tiny ribbon of purity and peace. As he carefully binds the wound, applying just the right amount of pressure, he speaks. He uses words as medicine, weaving a gentle tapestry of distraction to carry the boy's mind far away from the sand. "Tell me about your kitchen back home," the medic whispers, his eyes never leaving his work, his voice an anchor in the fog. "Tell me what it smells like on a Sunday morning." The boy swallows hard, his voice trembling as he searches his memory. "Coffee," he whispers back, his eyes still closed. "It smells like dark coffee, and the biscuits my mother makes. She leaves them on the windowsill to cool." "That sounds beautiful," the medic murmurs, tying a small, neat knot in the cotton. "I can almost smell them. Does she use butter or jam?" "Both," the boy breathes, a tiny, ghost of a smile touching the corners of his mouth. "Always both." In that tiny exchange, the medic has performed a miracle. He has reached across the ocean and pulled the boy's mother into the mist. He has offered a mother's solace, filling the terrifying void of the beach with the warm, golden light of a Sunday morning. The shivering begins to subside. The rapid, frantic heartbeat slows, settling into a steady, peaceful rhythm. The medic unscrews the cap of his canteen and lifts it to the boy's lips, letting the cool, fresh water wash away the taste of the salt and the fear. He gently rests the boy's head back against the folded canvas pack, smoothing the damp hair away from his forehead with the infinite tenderness of a parent putting a child to bed. All down the misty shoreline, this quiet symphony of healing plays on. The medics are the weavers of an invisible, unbreakable net of comfort, catching the fallen before they can slip into despair. Further down the beach, an older medic sits cross-legged in the sand next to a soldier whose chest is wrapped in thick bandages. The pain has been dulled by a tiny, precious vial of medicine, leaving the soldier floating in a soft, painless haze. He is entirely at peace, his eyes watching the pale sky above. He reaches a slow, heavy hand toward the medic, his fingers brushing the canvas sleeve. "In my left pocket," the soldier whispers, his voice barely a breath against the wind. "Can you get it for me?" The medic nods slowly. He reaches his clean hands into the damp, heavy wool of the soldier's jacket. From the breast pocket, resting right over the heart, he pulls out a small, folded piece of paper. It is worn at the creases, the edges soft and feathered from being held 1,000 times. "Read it to me," the soldier asks softly. "My eyes are a little tired." The medic unfolds the letter. The handwriting is elegant, a looping script that speaks of a different world, a world of parlors and inkwells and quiet afternoons. He begins to read, his voice pitched to the soothing cadence of a bedtime story. He reads about a small garden blooming in the spring. He reads about a neighborhood dog that finally learned to fetch a wooden stick. He reads the words of a young wife who is looking at the moon, sending her love across the water. The medic does not simply recite the words, he breathes life into them. He reads them with the reverence of a holy text, because in this moment, on this cold stretch of sand, this letter is the most sacred thing in the universe. It is the absolute proof that love exists, that it endures, and that it is waiting patiently for the storm to pass. The wounded soldier listens, a look of transcendent peace settling over his weary features. He closes his eyes, surrounded by the voice of his sweetheart, carried on the gentle breath of a stranger. These men with the canvas bags are absorbing the sorrow of the beach and replacing it with quiet grace. They are ordinary boys who have found themselves endowed with an extraordinary capacity for empathy. They work until their knees are bruised from the stones, until their backs ache from bending over the fallen, but they never rush. They never let the vastness of the task harden their hearts. When they run out of clean bandages, they tear their own undershirts into strips. When their canteens are empty, they offer the warmth of their own coats, draping their heavy wool jackets over the shivering shoulders of the boys in the sand. When there is nothing left in their bags to give, they give themselves. They sit in the damp earth and simply hold hands. They offer the profound, beautiful comfort of presence. You are not alone. I am sitting right here. I will not leave you in the dark. There is a staggering intimacy in this care. It is a brotherhood forged not in the loud, sweeping arcs of bravery, but in the quiet, whispered corners of vulnerability. A medic leans over a boy who is drifting into a deep, heavy sleep and gently tucks a woolen blanket around his shoulders, making sure the edges are sealed against the cold ocean breeze. He lingers for just a moment, watching the boy's chest rise and fall, ensuring the breathing is easy and calm. He places a hand on the boy's shoulder, a silent blessing, before rising slowly to his feet to find the next soul in need of light. The mist begins to glow with a softer, warmer hue as the morning slowly advances. The tide is pulling back, retreating from the shoreline as if bowing its head in respect to the quiet heroism unfolding on the sand. The ocean's roar has softened into a rhythmic, rushing lullaby, a natural metronome keeping time with the beating hearts of the resting men. To look upon this beach now is not to see the heartbreak of the world, but to witness its profound, enduring beauty. It is a testament to the fact that wherever there is suffering, there will always be hands that reach out to heal. There will always be a voice willing to hum a childhood song, a heart willing to carry the weight of another's fear, a stranger willing to become a brother in the darkest of hours. Let the gentle mist wrap around them like a protective shroud. Let the cool, damp sand become a soft, yielding bed for their weary bodies. They have fought their battles, they have crossed the terrifying water, and now they are held safely in the arms of compassion. Close your eyes, and feel the soft, clean cotton resting against the skin. Listen to the gentle, rhythmic hum of a voice whispering that everything will be all right. Breathe in the scent of the ocean, cleansed by the rain and softened by the morning light. The pain is fading. The fear has been washed away. You are surrounded by the quiet, unwavering grace of those who heal in the dark. Rest your mind in the warmth of that gentle touch. Let the deep, soothing peace of the shoreline carry you into a safe, dreamless sleep, knowing that you are watched over, you are cared for, and you are loved. To step away from the roaring sea and into the ancient, sunken lanes of the countryside is to walk into a sudden, breathless dream. The vast, open expanse of the beach, with its cold wind and endless, terrifying horizon, is finally left behind. As the weary men crest the bluffs and move inland, the landscape shifts around them with a startling suddenness. The world entirely narrows. The sky, which was so wide and indifferent just hours ago, is suddenly sliced into a thin ribbon of pale gray, visible only through a thick, overarching canopy of interlocking branches. They have entered the hedgerows. These are not the neatly trimmed, manicured garden hedges of home. They are towering, ancient walls of earth and stone, woven together by centuries of thick, knotted roots, thorny brambles, and creeping ivy. They rise up high on either side of the narrow dirt paths, creating deep, sunken corridors that snake through the French countryside in a complex, dizzying labyrinth. To walk into this maze is to be swallowed completely by the green. But the most jarring thing is the quiet. After the deafening, earth-shaking roar of the ocean and the chaotic, crushing noise of the shoreline, the silence of the hedgerows is heavy and profound. It presses gently against their ears, a thick, muffled stillness that feels almost physical. It is a quiet so deep that a man can hear the heartbeat of the soldier walking 3 paces ahead of him. It is a hush that forces the mind to finally slow down, to stop its frantic racing, and to absorb the staggering, heavy weight of the morning's memories. The boys walk single file down the dusty, winding paths. Their steps are no longer driven by the frantic, desperate adrenaline of survival. Now, they are fueled by a quiet, stubborn endurance. Their heavy leather boots drag softly in the loose soil. Their canvas uniforms, still stiff with dried salt from the channel, rub uncomfortably against their tired skin. Every muscle aches with a deep, vibrating exhaustion. They move like sleepwalkers navigating a beautiful, overgrown dream. As they walk, the labyrinth casts long, dappled shadows over their soot-stained faces. The air here is entirely different from the beach. It is still and humid, smelling richly of damp moss, crushed ferns, and the sweet, loamy scent of ancient topsoil. For boys who grew up running through the pine forests of the Pacific Northwest or the dense, shadowy woods of the Appalachian Mountains, there is a strange, haunting familiarity to this smell. It is the scent of the earth, universal and grounding. It reminds them of childhood afternoons spent building forts in the brush, a gentle memory that softens the harshness of the long march. A young man, his eyes heavy and half-closed with sleep deprivation, catches his boot on a thick, exposed root that stretches across the path like a sleeping snake. He stumbles forward, the massive weight of his canvas pack threatening to pull him face-first into the dirt. But before he can fall, the man walking right behind him steps forward, reaching out a strong, steady hand to catch him by the webbing of his shoulder. "Easy now," the older boy whispers, his voice a soft, soothing rustle in the quiet lane. "I've got you. Just watch the ground." He does not let go immediately. He keeps his hand firmly on the younger boy's shoulder as they resume their slow march, providing a silent, physical tether in the dim light. It is a tiny, beautiful moment of everyday heroism. It is the quiet, unspoken promise that even in the confusing depths of the labyrinth, no one will be allowed to fall. They are carrying each other through the shadows. Eventually, a silent signal is passed back down the winding line. A raised hand. A soft gesture to the side. The column comes to a halt. It is time to rest. The men do not sit, they simply surrender to gravity. They lean their heavy shoulders back against the towering walls of earth and root, letting the ancient hedgerow take the weight of their weary bodies. Steel helmets are slowly unbuckled and placed gently in the soft moss at their feet. They tilt their heads back against the leaves, closing their eyes, and letting out long, slow sighs that mingle perfectly with the gentle breeze in the canopy above. A metal canteen is passed carefully between two friends. The water inside is warm, tasting faintly of tin and wet canvas, but to these parched, exhausted boys, it is the sweetest nectar in the world. One takes a small, slow sip, swishing it in his dry mouth before swallowing, then wipes the rim carefully with his sleeve and hands it back. They do not speak. They only share a look of profound, weary understanding. We are here. We made it this far. Sitting in the dirt, a boy from a crowded, concrete city notices a tiny splash of color near the toe of his boot. Nestled in a tangle of dark green ivy and brown roots is a single, tiny blue wildflower. It is impossibly delicate, a fragile speck of beauty pushing its way through the heavy earth. He reaches out a trembling, dirt-caked finger and gently strokes the soft petal. He thinks of the window boxes back in his neighborhood, how his mother used to coax bright geraniums to bloom on the rusty fire escape. He smiles, a soft, private smile just for himself. The tiny flower is a quiet reminder that even in the midst of a changing, frightening world, life continues to bloom, gentle and persistent. A few yards away, bathed in a single, dusty shaft of sunlight that has managed to pierce the thick leaves, a soldier pulls a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It is a letter from his father, received weeks ago, but carried like a sacred talisman. The paper is wrinkled, the edges frayed, but the familiar, blocky handwriting remains clear. He reads the words not to learn their meaning, for he has memorized them long ago, but to hear his father's voice echoing in his mind. He closes his eyes and imagines sitting on the back porch with his dad on a quiet Sunday evening, listening to the crickets wake up in the tall grass. He remembers the smell of his father's pipe tobacco, rich and sweet, and the reassuring, steady cadence of his voice telling him that everything will be all right. In the dim light of the hedgerow lane, he wraps that memory around himself like a warm, heavy blanket. It shields him from the exhaustion and the lingering fear of the morning. For a few precious minutes, he is not a soldier lost in a labyrinth, he is just a son, sitting safely at home in the twilight. The hedgerows, which at first seemed like intimidating, claustrophobic walls, slowly transform into something else as the men rest. They become a sanctuary. The thick earth and tangled roots absorb the sounds of the outside world, creating a perfectly insulated, quiet cocoon. The men realize that these ancient earthen walls are shielding them, hiding them in their deep, cool shadows. The labyrinth is holding them safely in its winding arms. They look around at one another. Their faces are pale beneath the soot, their eyes shadowed with a fatigue that words cannot adequately describe. Yet, there is a serene, breathtaking beauty in their shared silence. They are a brotherhood forged in the freezing waves of the beach, now navigating the quiet, overgrown paths of the afternoon. They do not need to speak of what they have seen, for the memories are etched into all of their hearts, heavy and profound. They simply exist together, drawing comfort and strength from the steady, rhythmic breathing of the men resting beside them. As the afternoon wears on, the light filtering through the leaves begins to slowly change. The bright, dusty beams soften into a rich, golden hue, painting the moss and the dirt in warm, amber tones. The air cools, and the shadows lengthen, stretching down the sunken lanes like long, protective fingers. The birds, which had been silent for so long, slowly begin to sing. It is a tentative, sweet melody, a series of gentle chirps and trills that echo softly through the green corridors, a lullaby from the forest itself. The men begin to prepare for the coming evening. They do not dig into the earth, they simply nestle into the natural, soft hollows of the ancient walls. They arrange their heavy canvas packs as makeshift pillows. They pull their woolen collars up against the approaching chill of the dusk. They are so incredibly tired, their bodies heavy with a weariness that reaches all the way to their souls. Let the ancient hedgerows stand guard over them tonight. Let the thick roots and the soft moss be a gentle bed for their weary bones. They have walked through the terrifying expanse of the morning, and they have found their way into the quiet, sheltering heart of the labyrinth. Breathe in the scent of the cool, damp earth. Listen to the soft, rustling leaves overhead, singing a gentle lullaby in the fading light. Feel the steady, comforting presence of the brotherhood resting peacefully in the shadows. The walking is done for today. The heavy, breathless memories of the shore can finally be laid down in the soft dirt. Close your eyes, and let the quiet, enclosing green of the ancient paths wrap you in a safe, unbroken slumber. Rest now, in the heart of the labyrinth, and let the gentle night take you home. When the dust of a long, heavy road finally settles, it sometimes reveals the very face of grace waiting quietly in the shadows. The ancient, winding paths of the hedgerows eventually loosen their tight, overgrown grip, surrendering to the open air and the smooth, worn stones of a country road. As the weary boys in their heavy canvas uniforms walk out from beneath the canopy of trees, the late afternoon sun catches the dust kicked up by their boots. It forms a soft, golden haze that floats around them, a beautiful, swirling mist of earth and light. They are covered in this dust. It clings to their damp jackets, it settles into the deep creases of their weary faces, and it coats the heavy webbing they carry upon their shoulders. They have brought the shoreline and the fields with them, wearing the very soil of Normandy like a second skin. Before them lies a village. It is a quiet, humble collection of stone cottages with steep slate roofs and wooden shutters. For 4 long years, this village has existed in a state of suspended animation, holding its breath beneath a heavy, suffocating shadow. The streets are empty. The doors are bolted tight. The air is thick with the profound, lingering silence of a people who have learned to survive by remaining entirely unseen. The soldiers step onto the cobblestones, their boots making a slow, rhythmic scuffing sound. They move with an incredibly gentle caution. They are not conquerors marching in a grand, sweeping parade. They are exhausted, frightened young men, thousands of miles from their own front porches, stepping softly into a world they do not know. They look at the shuttered windows, their eyes heavy with fatigue, wondering if anyone is left behind the thick stone walls. Then, a sound breaks the stillness. It is the slow, agonizing creak of iron hinges. Down the narrow street, a heavy wooden door is pulled cautiously inward. The soldiers stop. They stand perfectly still in the golden dust, their breathing shallow, their hearts beating a sudden, nervous rhythm against their ribs. From the shadows of the doorway steps an older woman. She is small, her shoulders stooped with the weight of difficult years, and she wears a faded, patterned apron over her simple dress. Her hair is silver, pulled back into a neat knot, and her hands are deeply weathered, bearing the beautiful, proud scars of a lifetime of tending to the earth. She stands on her small stone stoop, looking out at the road. She sees the long line of towering, heavily burdened men covered in the gray and brown dust. To a passing glance, they might look terrifying, strangers carrying the heavy implements of a changing world. But she does not offer a passing glance. She looks closer. She looks beneath the heavy steel helmets and the soot-stained faces. She sees the wide, uncertain eyes. She sees the trembling hands. She sees that these are not statues of iron, they are simply boys. They are someone's sons, sent across a dark and terrifying ocean to return the sunlight to her quiet street. Slowly, she steps down from the porch. Her steps are deliberate, filled with a quiet, overwhelming reverence. In her hands, she carries a small, round loaf of bread. It is rustic and simple, wrapped partially in a clean, white linen cloth. It is a humble offering, perhaps the only food she had meant to eat that day, but she carries it forward as if it were the greatest treasure in the universe. She approaches the first soldier in the line. He is a boy from a quiet farming town, a boy who misses his mother with an ache so deep it hurts to breathe. He stands frozen, unsure of what to do, his hands resting awkwardly at his sides. The woman stops just a few inches from him. She reaches out, her trembling, weathered hands holding the bread up to his chest. She looks up into his weary eyes, and with a voice that is soft, fragile, and thick with unshed tears, she whispers a single word. Merci. The boy does not speak her language. He does not need to. The language of the human heart requires no translation. He looks at the loaf of bread, and then down into the kind, beautiful face of the woman standing before him. In her eyes, he sees the exact same fierce, protective love that he saw in his own grandmother's eyes when he boarded the train to leave home. And then, the heavy, stoic wall he has built around his heart to survive the morning simply crumbles. A single tear escapes the corner of his eye. It falls, cutting a clean, pale path through the thick layer of soot and dust on his cheek. It reaches the corner of his mouth, and he tastes the sharp, familiar salt of his own emotion mixed with the dry, gritty earth of France. It is the taste of sheer, overwhelming relief. It is the taste of a profound, beautiful humanity breaking through the dark. He reaches out with his large, clumsy, gloved hands and gently takes the bread. He nods, his chin trembling, unable to form even a single word. The woman does not step away. Instead, she reaches her arms up and wraps them around his dusty, heavy canvas jacket. She presses her cheek against his chest, holding him in a fierce, trembling embrace. She is holding him for his mother, who cannot be there to hold him herself. She is holding him in gratitude for the terrifying ocean he crossed to stand on her street. The boy closes his eyes and gently rests his chin on the top of her silver hair. The dust swirls around them in the evening light, a soft, golden halo wrapping around a quiet miracle. As if this embrace has broken a powerful spell, the village suddenly begins to wake. All down the cobblestone street, wooden shutters are pushed open. Heavy doors are unlatched. Out from the shadows step the villagers. There are old men leaning on wooden canes, their eyes shining with a brilliant, youthful light. There are mothers holding tightly to the hands of wide-eyed children. They spill out into the street, moving toward the line of exhausted soldiers with a hesitant, breathtaking joy. It is an encounter of overwhelming tenderness. There are no grand speeches, no loud cheers to shatter the peaceful evening. There is only a quiet, beautiful flood of shared emotion. An old man, his face lined with deep, proud wrinkles, approaches a soldier sitting on the edge of a stone fountain. The old man reaches into the deep pocket of his wool coat and pulls out a dusty, unlabeled bottle of cider, saved in a dark cellar for a day he feared might never come. He uncorks it with a soft pop and offers it to the boy. The soldier takes a slow drink, the sweet, crisp taste of the apples washing away the bitter tang of the sea. He passes the bottle to the friend sitting beside him, and the old man places a heavy, warm hand on both of their shoulders, nodding his head in a silent, profound blessing. Further down the lane, a little girl, perhaps no more than 6 years old, stands hiding behind her mother's skirt. She peeks out, her dark eyes looking up at a towering soldier with a radio strapped to his back. The soldier kneels down, his heavy gear creaking softly. He rests his helmet on the cobblestones. He reaches deep into the pocket of his trousers, pushing past his spare socks and a folded map, until his fingers brush against a small, foil-wrapped square. It is a piece of chocolate, melted and reformed in the heat of his pocket, carried all the way from a camp in England. He holds it out in his open palm. The little girl looks up at her mother, who nods softly, her eyes brimming with tears. The girl steps forward and takes the chocolate with tiny, delicate fingers. She offers the soldier a shy, radiant smile, a smile so pure and bright that it instantly banishes the lingering shadows of the hedgerows from his mind. He smiles back, a true, genuine smile that reaches all the way to his tired eyes. In that beautiful, fleeting moment, he is not a tired traveler in a foreign land. He is just a big brother, sharing a piece of candy on a summer afternoon. The soldiers begin to realize, with a sudden, overwhelming clarity, exactly why they are here. Through all the terrifying hours on the dark ships, through the freezing waves and the sheer, agonizing cliffs, the idea of freedom had been just a word. It was an abstract thought written in newspapers and spoken through the static of a radio. But here, standing on the cobblestones, tasting the tears and the dust, freedom is no longer a word. Freedom is the face of the grandmother offering a piece of bread. Freedom is the sweet taste of cellar cider. Freedom is the unburdened smile of a little girl holding a piece of melted chocolate. They reach hands into their breast pockets, feeling the crinkled edges of the letters they carry from home. The words written by their own families seem to perfectly align with the grateful eyes of the villagers standing before them. They know, with absolute certainty, that their mothers and fathers would be so incredibly proud of them in this exact moment. They are bridging the gap between two worlds, weaving them together with tiny threads of everyday heroism and quiet kindness. A medic, moving slowly through the crowd, stops to kneel beside an elderly man who has scraped his hand on a rough stone wall. The medic does not walk past. He opens his canvas bag, taking out a clean, white cloth and a small tin of ointment. He cleans the villager's hand with the same infinite, gentle care he used on the beach, wrapping it softly in a bandage. The old man looks at the young healer, his eyes shining, and gently pats the medic's cheek in silent thanks. It is a beautiful reversal of care, the healer tending to the land, and the land offering a quiet, spiritual healing to the weary boy. As the sun begins to dip below the slate roofs of the cottages, the sky turns a deep, breathtaking shade of lavender and rose. The golden dust finally begins to settle, coating the cobblestones in a soft, fine powder. The air cools, carrying the rich, comforting scent of wood smoke as the villagers begin to light the hearths that have been dark for far too long. The soldiers cannot stay forever. The road still stretches out ahead of them, winding deep into the heart of the country. But for this one, suspended evening, they are allowed to simply rest. They sit on the low stone walls, leaning against the sides of the cottages, breaking the humble bread and sharing the water. They are surrounded by the gentle, melodic murmur of a language they do not speak, but entirely understand. They have tasted the tears in the dust, and they have found them to be sweet. The heavy, suffocating anxiety of the morning has been washed away by the trembling embraces of strangers. They are loved here. They are welcomed. They have brought the light back to a dark road, and in return, the village has given them a profound, unshakable peace. So let the evening fall softly over the slate roofs. Let the warm, gentle glow of the lantern light spill out from the open windows and dance across the cobblestones. The exhausted travelers have found a quiet sanctuary in the arms of the grateful. Breathe in the cool, twilight air. Listen to the soft, rhythmic hum of the village coming back to life. Feel the profound, beautiful warmth of a shared smile and a piece of broken bread. The world is a vast and complicated place, but tonight, it is simply made of open doors and grateful hearts. Rest your weary mind in the quiet grace of this twilight street. Let the beautiful, lingering taste of the evening settle into your soul, and know that even on the longest journeys, there is always a place where the heart can find its way home. When the longest day in the history of the world finally exhales, it leaves behind a twilight so perfectly still, it feels like a dream. As the sun dips below the edge of the western horizon, it pulls the harsh, unforgiving light of the day down with it, leaving the shores and fields of Normandy bathed in a soft, bruised purple. The air cools, and the frantic, chaotic energy that pushed these young men across the freezing water and up the towering cliffs slowly begins to evaporate. It is replaced by a heavy, surreal quiet. The world has changed forever, the maps of history have been entirely redrawn, but here, in the tall grass and the damp earth, there are no grand declarations. There are only exhausted boys, standing in the fading light, realizing that they have survived to see the night. The forward motion finally stops. The orders are whispered down the line, passed from shadow to shadow, dig in, and rest. To dig into the earth after a day of such unimaginable exhaustion is an act of pure, stubborn resilience. The men unfasten the small, heavy shovels from their canvas packs. Their hands are already blistered, their fingers numb from the ocean water and scraped raw from the cold stone of the cliffs. Yet, they kneel in the grass and begin to turn the soil. It is a slow, rhythmic movement. The metal blade bites softly into the ground, lifting the dark, rich dirt and setting it aside. There is a profound, unexpected intimacy in this act. They are not just building a defense against the unknown, they are carving out a tiny, personal sanctuary in a foreign land. As they dig deeper, they smell the deep, loamy scent of the French countryside. It smells of crushed fern roots, damp clay, and old, ancient forests. A boy from the deep, rolling hills of the American South pauses in his digging. He rests his tired hands on the wooden handle of his shovel and simply breathes in the smell of the freshly turned earth. It is the exact same smell as his grandfather's garden in late April, just after the first heavy spring rain. He remembers kneeling in the dirt as a child, placing tiny seeds into the dark furrows, his hands covered in mud, listening to the gentle hum of the bees. That memory wraps around him like a warm blanket. He closes his eyes and lets the familiar scent ground him, tethering his racing heart to the beautiful, ordinary peace of his childhood. The earth here may be thousands of miles from home, but it yields the same way. It offers the same quiet embrace. Slowly, the shallow hollows are finished. The men lay their heavy canvas shelter halves over the damp soil, creating a fragile barrier against the evening dew. They ease themselves down into the ground, their aching muscles screaming in quiet relief as they finally surrender their weight to the earth. They are cradled by the dirt, hidden below the level of the wind, sheltered in the deep, protective shadows of the fields. And then, as the purple twilight deepens into a vast, velvet black, the first stars begin to appear. They emerge slowly at first, shy silver pinpricks piercing the canvas of the night, and then, as the darkness fully settles, the sky explodes into a breathtaking canopy of light. The heavens are completely indifferent to the struggles of the day. The stars shine with the same cold, majestic brilliance they have held for millions of years. To look up from a shallow trench in the ground and see the entire universe spread out above is a deeply humbling, breathtaking experience. The men lie on their backs, their helmets resting in the dirt beside them, and stare up at the sky. In the profound silence of the evening, surrounded by the sleeping earth, the true weight of the day finally catches up to them. It is here, in the safety of the dark, that the quiet grieving begins. It is not a loud or dramatic mourning. It is a heavy, hollow ache that settles deep in the center of the chest. A young man lies in his trench, his shoulder pressing against the cold dirt, and looks at the empty space beside his pack. That space was supposed to be filled by his best friend. They had shared a cramped canvas tent in England. They had nervously painted each other's faces with burnt cork before boarding the planes. They had promised to sit on the porch together and drink a cold beer when they finally made it back home. But his friend is not here beneath the stars. He remains somewhere behind them, resting forever in the morning mist of the shoreline. The young man does not weep out loud. He simply reaches out a trembling hand and presses his palm flat against the empty patch of canvas where his friend should be sleeping. He traces the fabric, his eyes tracing the bright path of a shooting star above. He whispers a quiet, private goodbye into the night air. He remembers the sound of his friend's laugh, the way he always lost at card games, the way he carried a slightly crushed photograph of his mother in his helmet liner. He gathers these tiny, beautiful details and carefully folds them into his heart, promising to carry them for the rest of his life. He is carrying the memory of a boy who will never grow old, keeping his spirit alive in the quiet, breathing silence of the French countryside. All across the fields, these silent vigils are taking place. Men look up at the stars and whisper the names of the brothers they lost. They honor the everyday heroism of the boys who did not make it up the beach. They mourn the gentle pharmacist who bandaged their knees, the quiet farmer who shared his last drop of water, the schoolteacher who led the way through the freezing surf. The grief is a heavy, invisible ocean, and they are floating in it together, bathed in starlight. To combat the overwhelming sadness of the night, they turn to the tiny, fragile tethers that connect them to the world of the living. In a neighboring hollow, a soldier uses the incredibly faint light of the moon to look at a letter he has pulled from his breast pocket. It is too dark to actually read the words. The ink is just a blur of shadows against the pale paper. But he does not need to see the letters to know what they say. He runs his thumb over the creases, feeling the exact spots where his wife's hands folded the page. He looks up from the paper and searches the sky. He finds the familiar shape of the Big Dipper, resting low and bright on the horizon. A profound, beautiful realization washes over him. These are the exact same stars that are shining over his small house across the ocean. The universe is a vast, ancient bridge. He imagines his wife stepping out onto their back porch, wrapping a knitted shawl around her shoulders against the chill of the evening, and looking up at that very same constellation. The distance between them, the terrifying expanse of the dark water and the endless miles of earth, suddenly collapses. The starlight touches her face, and it touches his. In the vast, sweeping theater of the cosmos, they are looking into each other's eyes. He smiles, a soft, weary smile that brings a gentle warmth to his soot-stained face. He presses the folded letter to his lips, kissing the paper, and tucks it safely back over his heart. He is not alone. As long as the stars are shining, he is connected to the love that is waiting for him in the dawn. As the night deepens, the biting chill of the coastal air begins to settle into the trenches. The thin wool blankets offer little protection against the damp cold of the earth. In the hollows that are wide enough, men shift closer together. They lie back to back, pressing their spines against one another, sharing the fragile, precious heat of their exhausted bodies. They do not speak. They only listen to the steady, rhythmic breathing of the man beside them. That sound, the slow, deep inhale and exhale of a surviving brother, is the most comforting lullaby in the world. It is the sound of life persisting. It is the sound of the human spirit refusing to be extinguished by the dark. A medic, his canvas bag finally empty of bandages and his hands washed clean by the evening dew, makes one final, slow walk through the scattered trenches. He moves like a quiet shepherd, his footsteps utterly silent in the soft grass. He pauses beside a hollow where two young boys are shivering in their sleep. Very gently, the medic unties his own heavy woolen jacket. He drapes it carefully over the sleeping boys, tucking the edges in to trap the warmth. He stands in the cool night air in only his thin cotton shirt, his arms crossed over his chest, but his heart is immeasurably warm. He watches the boys stop shivering, their breathing settling into a deeper, more peaceful rhythm, before he quietly walks away to find his own piece of the earth to rest upon. The wind sweeps softly over the hedgerows, rustling the leaves of the ancient apple trees and carrying the faint, salty scent of the distant ocean. It sounds like a long, gentle shushing, a mother calming a restless child. The changed world is finally going to sleep. The men in the earth have given everything they had to give. They have faced the terrifying vastness of the sea, the unyielding stone of the cliffs, and the agonizing labyrinth of the paths. Now, the earth has opened her arms to hold them. The stars are keeping watch over their quiet, sleeping forms. Let the grief of the day wash away into the dark soil. Let the memories of the fallen become beautiful, shining constellations in the minds of the living. They are safe now. The night is a blanket of grace, woven with the silver threads of starlight and the quiet resilience of the human heart. Breathe in the cool, still air of the midnight fields. Feel the solid, protective embrace of the earth around you. Look up at the endless, brilliant canopy of the stars, and know that no matter how much the world changes, the light of love and brotherhood will always endure. Rest your weary mind. Let the gentle breathing of the night carry you into a deep, unbroken peace. Close your eyes and surrender to the beautiful, starry quiet. The ocean has a way of remembering in whispers what the world sometimes forgets and shouts. If you were to stand upon the shores of Normandy today, in the soft, golden light of a late summer evening, you would find a world of profound and breathtaking peace. The air is clear and sweet, carrying the faint, clean scent of salt and wild clover. The long, curving stretch of the beach is a canvas of fine, pale sand, shimmering like silk beneath the gentle touch of the sun. There are no iron giants here now. There are no roaring engines or the heavy, rhythmic thud of boots. Instead, there is only the ancient, hypnotic song of the sea, a slow, pulsing cadence of waves that crest in shades of turquoise and lace, before spilling softly onto the sand and retreating with a long, satisfied sigh. The tide has come and gone thousands upon thousands of times since that misty morning so many years ago. It is a tireless, patient gardener, smoothing over the deep furrows of the earth and washing away the temporary footprints of man. The craters have filled with green grass and wildflowers, the rusted metal has been reclaimed by the salt and the deep, and the jagged edges of the world have been softened by the relentless, loving touch of time. To look upon these shores now is to see a masterpiece of restoration. It is as if the earth itself has spent decades breathing deeply, slowly exhaling the tension of the past until only this stillness remains. But if you sit very quietly in the dunes, where the tall sea grass bows its head in the breeze, you will realize that the silence is not empty. It is a full, vibrant silence, thick with the echoes of a million human stories. The tide may wash away the sand, but it can never wash away the love that was poured into this earth. It cannot erase the quiet courage of a boy who reached out to hold a friend's hand in the dark, or the steadying breath of a medic whispering words of home to a soul in transition. These moments, the tiny, beautiful fragments of everyday heroism, are woven into the very fabric of the wind. They linger in the rustle of the leaves in the apple orchards and in the way the moonlight reflects off the stone walls of the village cottages. Somewhere, across a vast and quiet ocean, an old man sits on his porch as the twilight settles over his own neighborhood. He is a grandfather now, his hands withered and his eyes softened by the passage of many seasons. He does not often speak of the great events or the grand sweeping arcs of history. When his grandchildren ask him about the shore, he does not tell them of the noise or the steel. Instead, he tells them about the taste of a fresh strawberry given to him by a French child. He tells them about the warmth of a woolen cap a stranger placed upon his head. He tells them about the boy from the next town over who used to sing songs from the radio to keep their spirits high while the ships rocked in the dark. For him, the memory is not a burden, it is a garden he tends with the greatest of care. He remembers the faces of the brothers he left behind not with the sharpness of grief, but with the soft glow of a flickering candle. He sees them always as they were, vibrant, hopeful, and beautifully young, forever suspended in a moment of absolute, selfless love. He knows that his life, with all its quiet joys and simple comforts, is a bridge they built for him. He carries their laughter in his heart, a living testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Up on the high bluffs, where the green grass meets the sky, the white stones stand in long, silent rows. They are perfectly aligned, a geometric forest of peace that looks out over the water. It is not a place of sorrow, but a sanctuary of profound grace. Each stone marks a name, a home, and a heart that once beat with the same longings we feel tonight. Each one represents a letter that was read 1,000 times, a photograph that was held against a chest in the dark, and a promise of home that was kept in the most beautiful, spiritual way. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of violet, amber, and soft, dusty rose, the visitors to the shore begin to drift away. They walk slowly, their voices hushed, instinctively honoring the sacredness of the space. A young mother leads her child by the hand toward the water's edge. The little girl kneels in the wet sand, picking up a small, smooth pebble, a piece of the earth that has been tumbled and polished by the channel for a lifetime. She holds it up to the light, marveling at its simple beauty, before placing it gently back into the surf. It is a tiny, unconscious echo of the kindness that once flooded this beach. It is the same gentle hand, the same quiet reverence for life. The child does not know the history, but she feels the peace. She feels the safety of the world she has inherited. And in that simple, beautiful moment, the cycle of grace is completed. The love that was brought to this shore so long ago has blossomed into the quiet security of a child playing in the twilight. The villagers in the towns nearby have never forgotten the strangers who walk through their streets in the golden dust. Every year, when the spring air turns warm and the lilacs begin to bloom, they light lanterns in their windows. They are not lanterns of warning, but lanterns of welcome and remembrance. They are a signal to the stars that the light has never gone out. They still tell the stories of the boys who shared their chocolate and the healers who tended to their elders. The connection between the land and the men who came to it is an unbreakable thread, a tapestry of gratitude that grows richer with every passing year. They guard the memories as if they were their own family treasures, ensuring that the names whispered in the dark are never lost to the wind. Now, as the deep indigo of the night begins to settle over Normandy, the lighthouse on the point begins its slow, rhythmic rotation. Its long, silver beam sweeps across the dark water, a steady pulse of light in the vastness of the channel. It watches over the same sea that once carried 1,000 ships, but the water is calm now, a mirror for the emerging stars. The light of dawn has become the light of an eternal, resting peace. The story of the shore is not a story of what was lost, but of what was found in the deepest shadows. It is the story of how, in the face of overwhelming uncertainty, the human heart chooses compassion. It is the story of how a shared cup of water, a whispered prayer, and a steadying hand can rebuild a broken world. It is the story of you, and me, and the quiet, stubborn resilience that allows us to find the beauty in the morning after the longest of nights. Close your eyes now, and listen to the tide. It is the heartbeat of the world, slow and steady and sure. Feel the soft, cool air of the French countryside as it drifts through the open windows of your mind. Imagine the golden sand, now cool and dark beneath the moonlight, resting in a state of perfect, unshakable grace. The work is done. The journey is over. The boys have found their rest, and the world has found its way back to the light. The shadows have retreated, leaving only the vast, starry sky and the gentle, rhythmic breathing of the sea. There is nothing left to fear. There is only the beauty of the memory and the profound, healing power of the silence. Let the tide wash over your worries, smoothing them away like footprints in the sand. Let the soft, salty breeze carry your thoughts out over the quiet water, far beyond the horizon. You are held in a sanctuary of history and love. You are part of the peace that was so dearly won. Breathe in the deep, still night. Feel the warmth of the blankets around you, a soft echo of the comfort once offered on a cold shoreline. The stars are watching over the world, and the earth is at rest. The tide is coming in, a gentle, rising promise of a new and beautiful day. Rest your mind in the cradle of the waves. Let the whispers of the wind sing you a final, soothing lullaby. All is quiet. All is well. Sleep now, in the timeless, silver light of the shore, and let the gentle night carry you softly, safely, into the dreams of a peaceful world.